Section 24 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon, translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. This LibriVox recording is a public domain, recorded by Harvey. Part 3. Feeble-Mindedness and Dementia. Chapter 1. The Intellectual Weakening and General Paralysis. 1. Criticism of current definitions of dementia. Does there exist a clear and precise conception of dementia? Certainly not. The best definition given until very recently is the following. Dementia consists in a definite progressive weakening of the intellectual faculties following a state of normal intelligence. Let us note that this definition contains two distinct elements, the one evolutional, the other static. Let us take the evolutional character. This is doubtless very important for diagnosis, since from the time of Esquirol, it has distinguished dementia from idiocy and similar states. But this is only a historical character, for which one could not draw any idea of the real import of the dementia at the moment of observation. The second element of the definition, the intellectual weakening, is still more unsatisfactory because it offers nothing that is really characteristic if we adhere to so vague a formula. What is this intellectual weakening of which we speak? In what does it consist? In what particular does it differ from the state of the intellectual faculties found among so many of the insane who are not dements? Intellectual weakening is almost the rule among the insane. Let us take melancholics. It is a very commonplace observation that these patients are less intelligent and, as it were, weakened in intelligence during their affliction as compared with their state when cured. As to alcoholics, Kraepelin speaks repeatedly of their weakening intellectually. Chronic delirium cases, according to some alienists, present an attendant state of mental debility, though this is perhaps questionable. Let us set these cases aside along with certain degenerates. It seems that all other insane cases without exception have a weakened intelligence. Certain ones are perhaps so only temporarily and constitute what was once called a curable dementia. But in any case, during the period of the existence of the disease, this weakened condition is evident, often demonstrable, and even measurable. The distinctive criterion which one seeks in this succession of ideas has therefore not yet been found. If no clear conception of dementia exists in the writings of the other alienists, may we not at least find it among moderns, who for several years past have prided themselves on employing in psychiatry the language of psychology? Not among them either. For to say, as some do, that paralytic dementia is a lack of mental synthesis is to be satisfied with words in order to follow the fashion. For this term, mental synthesis, is used today, rightly or wrongly, apropos of everything, and consequently does not apply any more exactly to dements than to other insane patients. To see in paralytic dementia an incoherence of the association of ideas, as Messelin has lately proposed, see Intellectual Weakening, L'Année Psychologie, 13, page 260, is to attempt a psychological explanation which, though more precise than the preceding, is only the more criticizable, because the ideational phenomena of incoherence is to be found among many other mental patients. Since it is very much less accentuated among general paralytics than among many maniacal, hallucinational, and confusional states, it cannot therefore characterize dementia. The serious fault of these so-called psychological definitions is that they are so commonplace, far from being applicable to dementia alone. They would answer equally well for nearly all forms of insanity. Whence does it come, then, that, notwithstanding the inadequacy of this theory, practitioners have the merited reputation of making an early diagnosis of general paralysis with the greatest accuracy? It is, first, because they make use of signs, especially of certain physical signs, which ordinarily accompany dementia. For instance, if an individual has a pupillary inequality, especially if he has difficulty of speech, and if to this difficulty be added the poorly defined symptom, intellectual weakening, then the diagnostician hesitates no longer. He is paralytic dementia. The practitioner leaves to the psychologist the delicate and unnecessary work of analyzing the intellectual weakening of the dement. In addition to the physical signs, and even when these are lacking, the practitioner makes use of certain information furnished by the family concerning the conduct of the patient. This information is characteristic. It bears upon facts which are stamped in advance as the symptoms of dementia. The neglect of his affairs, the lack of care and neatness, forgetting his address, the impossibility of performing a complicated round, errors in making change, heedless extravagance, are the facts which the practitioner recalls under the form of striking incidents. If he finds 3 or other similar incidents in the life of his patient, he hesitates no longer, nor does he further scrutinize the mentality of the patient. More than this, persons of the highest authority who have written upon the intellectual symptoms of paralytic dementia have done no more than recall such a series of incidents, while summarily classifying them under the heads of disorders of memory, of attention, of will. They believe they are writing psychology and characterizing a mental state. It is true that this empiricism usually suffices for the needs of medical practice, but it does not always suffice. We recall that once we were asked to diagnose the case of a woman some 50 years of age who had the small head of an imbecile. Her clothing was dirty and in disorder. She balanced herself on a chair and had spasmodic mumbling. She gave slow, monosyllabic answers to our questions and did not seem to understand the greater part of them, especially the difficult ones. She gave indeed the impression of a diminished intelligence. But was she an imbecile or a paralytic? She had no pulmonary inequality and spoke too little to show derangement of speech. The first physician saw in her an imbecile. As for us, allowing ourselves to be guided by one of those almost indefinable impressions which are so frequent in mental pathology, we incline towards general paralysis. At this moment, we are well convinced that only by the study of the mentality would it be possible to decide, and to recognize dementia, one must know what it is from the psychological point of view. But the most serious objection that one can make against the empiricism of practitioners is that if empiricism does not suffice to make with surety the greater part of the daily diagnosis, it does not go beyond diagnosis. This is practice but not science, as is to say particular, not general, and moreover practice, being thus separated from theory, remains local, partial, commonplace, and does not benefit by more extensive studies. This is very much to be regretted, because there is reason to suppose that the different forms of insanity show relations and resemblances among themselves, and the analysis of one would greatly illuminate the others. It is under the influence of these ideas that we have undertaken our investigation. We have studied the 2 principal forms of dementia, senile and paralytic, especially the latter, endeavouring to find the psychological formula which applies to it, and to it alone, because this is the necessary condition of every demonstration. How we went about it will be seen from what follows. It is unnecessary to explain our method. The best way is to see it in ascension. We have seen, examined and submitted to every sort of experimentation some 40 patients. It is many, even too many. We have accumulated so much material only because the idea which was to come out of it and permit us to interpret it all was long in making itself known, and we have been able to see clearly only after long groping in the dark. We begin by the study of general paralysis, or paralytic dementia. 2. The lowering of the intellectual level in paralytic dementia. We are going to show that every dement has an intellectual level below normal. This statement needs explanation because it would seem that we are, as it were, breaking down a door which is not locked, and it will be thought useless to demonstrate what everybody knows, namely that dementia carries with it an intellectual weakening. But we lay aside this expression intellectual weakening, which is vague and equivocal, and which we shall reserve for criticism further on. We wish to show especially that if our measuring scale of intelligence were used, which is composed of a graded series of slight difficulties to be overcome, of little problems to be solved, it would be easier to determine the point in this series where the dement fails, and as each point of the scale corresponds to a level of normal age established as a result of experiments upon normal children, this procedure permits the determination of the mental age of a general paralytic, by saying, for instance, that he is at the level of 8 years or of 5 years. We have here a measure whose precision is interesting and quite preferable to that commonplace assertion that a certain patient is very weak mentally and that another is not so weak. We have taken the level of intelligence of a great number of dements, and here is what we have noted. Although the method was organized for children and imbeciles only, the great majority of dements lend themselves admirably to it for two reasons. In the first place, this is because of their confiding, happy, optimistic character. They seat themselves quietly and reply to our questions without asking the why or wherefore of the examination, even when we abruptly ask them such childish questions as, "How many fingers have you?" At times a slight excitement or a touch of delirium troubles our examination, but it amounts to very little. Only once, one of our patients, a bachelor of some 40 years, on hearing our first question replied dryly, "Pardon, sir, I should like very much to know why you ask me that." Let us recognize this as the reply of one who is annoyed rather than of a paralytic. If a paralytic was capable of it, it was only because he was at the beginning of his affliction, and his mental level was 12 years and consequently nearly normal. This is truly a case where the exception proves the rule. The mental dispositions which render the general paralytic suited to an examination of intelligence are not the same as those which act upon imbeciles and morons. In a previous study, we have described the attitude of docility and deference which very many defectives show us. The deference is such that they seem to obey the most absurd suggestions. General paralytics have a very different character. If they yield to an examination, it is not through deference. Their social sentiment is no part of their psychology. They are particularly satisfied with themselves, without sequence in their ideas, and with the foundation of indifference, and this mental state renders them equally as manageable as imbeciles. Let us add that irritability is encountered similarly in both. Another reason why our general paralytics are excellent subjects for experimentation is because their particular form of mental trouble can readily be caught by the tests. What we here affirm needs explanation. Let us attempt to give the tests to a patient suffering from delusions of persecution. First he may resist, grow angry, or refuse to speak. Let us suppose him to be tractable. In spite of this, his mental state will not be discovered by our test because, while his delusions prove an absence of judgment, it is rare that our special tests upon judgment show that faculty to be lacking in him. It would seem that his intelligence is divided into two parts, the one sane and the other delirious. It is only the same part that the experimenter can put into action by the tests. On the contrary, with the paralytic everything is affected. The weakening is universal, and he showed himself as much at fault for any question of our examination as for the circumstances of his life. Another remark. Our method permits of measuring the intellectual level without taking account of accompanying circumstances, which sometimes produce an illusion in regard to the intelligence of a person. Thus we have examined a patient whose difficulties of articulation were so accentuated that we had much trouble to understand him. To listen to him, one would have thought him of very low grade. On measuring his intelligence, we found that he had a level of 9 years. Psychic and physical troubles do not always go together, although one is certainly inclined to that impression. We do not find emphasized in treatises a form of paralysis in which physical troubles are particularly marked. That which was evident only in very marked cases no longer appears as an exception. It might be objected that an extremely precise measurement of the mental level of general paralytics is of little value except for the moment it is made, since they are constantly on the road to disillusion. Consequently, this measurement has not the same interest as in the case of an imbecile, whose level is very much more static. But there are a number of problems which remain since the discovery of paralysis, which we have not been able to solve through lack of method by which we can appreciate the degree of dementia. For instance, is paralytic dementia progressive, or does it proceed by sudden drops? Would not the prognosis of its evolution be different if 6 months of the affliction sufficed to reduce an average intelligence to a level of 5 years, while in another case 2 years of illness would not have resulted in a similar decay? Since Beilager, there has been much discussion upon the degree of retrogression, upon its reality, whether it is extended only to physical troubles, and the phenomena of delirium, leaving the other functions definitely injured, or if paralytic dementia properly so called, although attributed by the anatomopathologists to the destruction of the fibers of Tuxek, is nevertheless itself subject to retrogression. The intellectual level of the same patient carefully taken at different dates would quickly enlighten us upon these points. In conclusion, we shall cite as an example the measurement of the level of a woman reduced by dementia to the intelligence of a child of 5 years. Beauchamp is a woman of 30, with delicate features and an amiable, smiling expression. She was formerly a teacher. Her husband, who esteemed and admired her, tells us that she had a very cultivated mind and a taste for art and literature. Now, at the end of only 6 months of illness, she shows a lamentable degree of decay, as we shall demonstrate. She talks willingly, although chiefly in monologue. Certain days she continually repeats the same story, but her recital is so obscure, so incoherent, so weak, that we cannot understand it even after many repetitions. She talks about a little child, very small. We conjecture that the mother, Beauchamp, says to the child, "Oh, how dirty you are!" Then the child seems to have thrown something violently onto the floor that went boom. The patient mimics the scene with energy. Soon after she looks at us and shows us the palm of her right hand, where there is a little scar which moves her to pity. She ends by explaining that the apothecary had been consulted, and that is all. As soon as the story is ended, the patient begins again. We have not been able to discover whether that little child was Beauchamp herself or not. She lent herself willingly to the experiment as far as her intelligence and power of attention permitted. In reality, she could not comprehend the simplest tests, and the explanation which we gave her served particularly no purpose at all. Below we give our conversation with a table showing the tests passed. We call attention to the fact that the sign positive indicates that the test has been passably well executed, while negative is a sign of failure. A table is displayed on the page, measuring scale of intelligence, results obtained with Beauchamp, general paralytic. Point to your nose. It is in the water. Incomprehensible sentence, but she points to her nose as she says it. Point to your eyes. Here they are. She leaves her chair and comes close to us with the intention of showing her eyes. Where is your mouth? There it is. She opens her mouth and places her finger there. We see that the first test is passed and proceed to the second. We place before the patient a picture representing an old man and a child drawing a cart. Look at this. Do you see? Tell me what we have here. Oh, I do not know. Look at it closely. Oh, I don't know. I do not know. She seems ready to pout. Oh, yes? Tell us what you see. I see nothing. Isn't there a picture? No. Oh, it is a little old man. And then the other, turning herself towards us. And then you see. And besides? Putting the picture aside and handing it back to us. I do not know who it is. I do not know who it is. Well, this one. What do you see in this? Showing her a picture of 2 unfortunates upon a bench. Oh, it is an old man asleep. And besides? That is all, and his wife is beside him. She pushes the picture away as though she did not wish to be bothered. Oh, I do not know her. And this one? We show her a picture that represents a prisoner looking out of the window of his cell. Oh, I don't know. But tell me, look, what do you see? Who is it? Oh, I don't know who it is. But what is he doing, this poor man? Oh, I don't know. I don't know him. As we insist, she seems to be irritated, pushes the picture away, and pouts while replying, I don't know. Let's laugh a little. She smiles. Her calm has returned, and we can continue. We consider that she has passed this second test because for 2 of the pictures she is enumerated. It is a little old man, and then the other. Once even she gave a bit of description. It is an old man asleep. But it must be remarked that it required great effort for her to adapt herself to the experiment. It was necessary to insist before she could be induced to look at the pictures. She even thought that we were asking her to recognize the persons in the pictures, a very curious absurdity which a normal child would never commit. The third test is a repetition of figures. Listen now carefully. I am going to explain what we are going to do. I am going to say some figures, and then you will repeat them. Understand? I am going to say a figure, then you say it after me. Listen. We raise our voice. 4. 4. 2, 9. 2. Why should I do it? 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. 6, 1, 3. No, I am not that old. I am 30 years old. She had some words which we could not catch. It is a confused murmuring. 3, 2, 9. She repeats nothing. 0, 2, 8. 8, 2, 0. See? 1, 3, 9. 9, 8. It is evident that when we give her a single figure, she understands that she must repeat it, but when we give her 2 or 3, she ceases to understand or loses the directing idea of the experiment after having had it for a moment. We note that once she was able to repeat 2 figures but never 3. The following test consists in giving words and sentences to be repeated. Our patient is going to act in this as in the other tests. After a preliminary explanation, we pronounce in a louder voice the words to be repeated. Papa? Yes, my papa. Shoe, hat. Yes, my hat. And then, I have a veil. In a natural voice. But no, that is not it. You must repeat just what I say without adding any more. Now repeat what I say, with raised voice. Hat, shoe. Yes, my hat. Yes, it is blue. It is blue with some, etc. The patient has not understood. To put it right, we had recourse to a proceeding which has often proved successful with normal children. Instead of explaining in abstract terms that one must repeat, we have her repeat some very simple words. Then we complicate them progressively. It is a sort of bait. Pam pam, pam pam, papa, papa, mama, mama, dodo, dodo. Shoes, hat. Yes, my shoes with mama. It is cold, I am hungry. Yes, from that moment, prattle. As it is a question here simply of recording a result, we are obliged to admit that our patient did not satisfy the requirements of Test 4 and that she does not repeat the sentence of 6 syllables. Perhaps she might do so after training, but this would no longer be within the limits of the test. What is your name? Margaret. And your other name? Beauchamp. This reply is completely satisfactory. It is true that this test has a social character, and that in life one has occasion to say his name much oftener than to repeat 1 or 2 figures. Our scale is adapted to little children, and they are often puzzled to remember their family name. They find it easier to repeat 2 figures. To sum up, our DEMENT passes all the tests at 3 years except 1. She attains therefore the level of 3 years, following the rule which we have established. But there is in her manner of answering the tests something which differentiates her from a child. Let us pass to the tests of 4 years. Are you a gentleman or a lady? Indeed, I am a lady. The question is unusual, almost impertinent, but it did not in the least shock her. What is this? Showing a key? It is my key. And this, what is this? Showing a penknife. Very well, my little, it is a little thing for me. What do you call this little thing? A little knife. And this? Showing a sou. Ah, that is 2 sous for me. Smile. We admit that this test has given satisfactory results. The attitude of the patient is nevertheless very peculiar. In the first place, she had difficulty in evoking the name of knife. Then she constantly took an attitude of proprietor, or rather monopolist. It is my key. It is 2 sous for me. We have never encountered anything analogous among normal children. Here are 2 lines. Which is the longer? Well, there. She shows a longer without hesitation. All the tests of 4 years are passed except the repetition of 3 figures. Let us see those of 5 years. Do you see these 2 boxes? The boxes are placed before her on the table. Give me the heavier. I do not know which is heavier. No, but find out and give it to me. Showing a box. Well, that one. Give me the heavier. Well, there is none. Also inside. Well, both of them. Both boxes are placed in her hands. Give me the heavier one. Here it is. She gives a box, and then this is the other. She gives the other box. The test is not passed. Our DEMENT did not understand the question. Copying a square gives rise to many difficulties. A large square was drawn before her on a sheet of paper, and she was asked to make one just like it. A pen was placed in her hands. She seemed very willing, and said, "Very well, yes, there." But she had not understood because, under the square, she slowly wrote her full name. We were obliged to intervene with a new explanation. Then she began scribbling in the model. We stopped her and finally obtained a reproduction of the square, but quite lacking in proportion. Nevertheless, the lack of skill in her hand, which the design betrays, is far less than her lack of skill in comprehending. If we compare her with a normal child of 3 or 4 years, we see at once the difference. The normal child may be far more awkward in directing his hand and in drawing the figure, but on the contrary, he is far more intelligent in comprehending that what is required of him is to copy it. Furthermore, we find 2 other curious examples of this difference. We attempt to make our patient copy a diamond and a written sentence. For the diamond, she writes below it a little line in zigzag, which shows once more how little she understands what is desired of her. We make her a second model and urge her to copy it. Instead of copying it, she embellishes the model with little scribblings inside or with little strokes about the outline. There is the same failure in copying a written sentence. We had written the little, and we asked Beauchamp to copy these 2 words, which should have been all the easier for her in that she can still write a little, but here again she did not understand. Instead of copying, she read the 2 words and understood their meaning. Immediately, her mind was turned in a direction quite other than we had wished. She said, "That is it, the little baby. There, see, the little dear." "Write down what you see there." "Well, it is very little because it is 4 years old. It is sweet. It is darling." Comfortable to her ideation, the patient writes after the model, "Baby of 4 years." The writing is tremulous, but nevertheless legible. This continuation of a commenced sentence seems to be dictated by the obsessing memory to which we have already alluded of the little child who went "Poem." The analysis of these 3 failures in the act of copying is interesting. A normal child may fail in the operation of copying, but understands that it is a question of copying. This comprehension is so simple that generally when one explains the tests, it is understood. On the contrary, our patient copy very well since she still knows how to write a little, but she cannot comprehend what is asked of her. 4 single sous are placed before her on the table. When we ask her to count them, she does so rapidly and declares that there are 4 sous. How did she understand that so easily? We think it is because counting sous is a social usage like giving one's name, while repeating and copying are operations which have no social usage and which one does not frequently perform in life. Thus our patient understands very well when asked to count, while she does not understand when asked to copy. Apropos of the act of counting, we shall give 2 other examples which are very interesting. We wish to discover whether our dement can count 13 single sous. She counts rapidly, but arrives at the number 12. This is not a bad error. The following is better. We give her 3 double sous and 3 single sous, and without difficulty she announces that makes 9 sous. Note carefully that this test belongs to 8 years. If our dement succeeds in this, it is first because counting is a usual act, and second, it is because she profits by previous instruction. To finish these tests of 5 years, let us say that our patient does not reconstruct the figure in the game of patience. She ends by uniting the pieces at random. She was able to accomplish some of the tests of 6 years. She showed the first time her right hand and left ear, and she gave her age, but she failed almost constantly in the other tests. Most of the time it was because she failed to comprehend what was desired of her. The ordinary explanation did not penetrate her intelligence. In support of this we cite a beautiful example. It is a question of definitions. Nothing seems more simple than to reply to the following questions. What is a fork, a table, a chair, etc.? When one knows these objects, but Beauchamp was never able to grasp the idea of a definition. Let the reader judge. What is a fork? Oh, I had one. I had beautiful ones. Yes, without doubt. But what is a fork? I had beautiful ones. But what is a fork? Well, it is like that. They are very beautiful. But explain to me, what is a fork? I had one that was beautiful. I have 2 of them. And a table? What is a table? Oh, I have a beautiful table. A table, what is that? I have a beautiful table. And a chair, what is a chair? Oh, I have a beautiful chair. And what is it? Oh, they are pretty. I have large chairs. Yes, they are pretty, very large. And a horse, what is that? Quickly. Oh, I have none. Oh, I have none. Certainly not a horse. But what is it? There are plenty everywhere. But what is a horse? A horse? I do not know where it is. And a mamma? My mamma. What is a mamma? Well, I do not know. Yes, but what is it? What is a mamma? Oh, well, I have one at home. She is 62 years old, mamma. And in 2 years, how old will she be? Well, the poor mother, she will go away. Thus, in spite of persistent effort, we cannot make ourselves understood, notwithstanding that this patient knows very well a fork, a table, etc., and we believe could define them if she only understood that we are asking for a definition. By applying the rules which we have adopted, we fix the intellectual level of Beauchamp at 5 years. We mean by this not that she has exactly the mental state of a child of 5 years, because we have seen how much of a difference separates her from a normal child of 5, but rather that she fails for one reason or another before the same difficulties as a normal child of 5 years. In establishing this level, we do not take into account the ways and means, but simply the results. End of section 24. Section 25 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon. Translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain, recorded by Leon Harvey. Chapter 2. The Minor Psychological Signs of General Paralysis. 1. A directing hypothesis. One who relied solely upon the results of our measuring scale would not be able to grasp the mental differences which differentiate an imbecile from a general paralytic. Shall we conclude that these subjects have the same mentality? Evidently not. We must put our readers on their guard against this erroneous interpretation of the bearing of our measurements. The scale which we use is made up of a series of small intellectual problems, and it is quite possible that two individuals may fail in the same problems without, for that reason, having similar mentalities. The practical consequence is that the efficiency of their mentality is the same, but the mentalities may be different. Our scale resembles very much a measuring rod, which instead of measuring the height, measures the intelligence, but just as an ordinary measuring rod gives no information regarding the normality of the physical development, and may indicate the same number of centimeters for a normal child and for an adult hunchback. So our scale of intelligence gives the actual level of intelligence without analyzing it and without informing us as to the type of mentality. The problem which we set for ourselves is therefore still untouched. Thus far, we have not succeeded in discovering how the state of dementia differs psychologically from the state of imbecility. Let us try to go further. A commonplace idea shall serve us as an entering wedge. The dement, it has often been said, is a rich person who has wasted his fortune, while an imbecile is one born poor and who remains poor all his life. If we examine this idea closely, we see at once by a simple statement of the facts that these two types of individuals are in an entirely different psychological condition. That which is lacking in the imbecile is a certain development of the thought. His thought is not evolved, and all that we know, all that we have previously learned from the precise nature of the evolution of the thought, serves to make us understand the condition in which it is found. Let us add that within the limits where his thought has evolved, he acts regularly if not normally. On the contrary, the general paralytic presents to us a thought which has previously evolved and which has reached the extreme limits of its evolution. This thought had then up to a certain moment been complete, but now it is attacked by a particular modification which has made it decrease. In exactly what does this decrease consist? It is at this point that our hypotheses commence. We believe that we have the choice between at least two explanations. According to the first, there would be produced in the paralytic a phenomenon, the inverse of evolution. His intelligence would be like a train that reversed its engine and ran back over the same line in the opposite direction from the preceding trip. The general paralytic would thus find himself realizing successively by a sort of tumbling down the mental state corresponding to 10 years, then 9 years, 8 years, 7 years, and so forth. This hypothesis of retrogression has for its one great merit, that of clarity. But this is probably all that can be said for it, because when one looks closely at a general paralytic, one sees clearly that his mental state does not resemble that of an imbecile, still less that of a child. Thus Beauchamp, whom we have already somewhat analysed, and whom we placed at the level of a child of 5 years, knows better how to read, to write, and to count money than a child of 5 years. And on the other hand, she has some more serious lacks of comprehension than is encountered even among such young children. There are here a host of slight signs which make us decide to abandon the hypothesis of retrogression, and we boldly choose another which we are going to explain. We admit provisionally that our patients remain virtually in possession of all their intelligence, but that they have difficulty in making use of it. The injury would affect the functioning. There would be embarrassment, difficulty, slowness, and even impossibility of exercising the existing functions, of applying acquired knowledge in a point of making the machine work. Even leaving our hypothesis in this very vague form, we can already predict what its character will be. This difficulty of functioning presents in reality an essentially pathological stamp, and consequently would only be by chance, by wholly exterior resemblance, that the paralytic could be compared to an imbecile and especially to a child. Therefore, while the hypothesis of retrogression would lead to the conclusion, certainly unacceptable to anyone who has associated with general paralytics, that these subjects have the mentality of children. The hypothesis of the failure of functioning prevents any comparison of this nature. It allows us indeed to foresee the children. Imbeciles and paralytics are alike in their inability to solve the same problems. They are stopped by the same obstacles so that we can attribute to them the same mental level. But the identity of the results in no way implies the identity of mechanisms. The mentalities remain distinct. Let us try to give a precise meaning to the words difficulty of functioning. They are still vague, general, and we prefer to consider a single one of the phenomena in which the difficulty manifests itself. This phenomenon is of a paramount importance and seems to give us the key to the problem. It is the evocation of the states of consciousness. We suppose, to state it briefly, that paralytics have especially a weakness of evocation. 2. Analysis of some observed results. We are now about to study successively the following phenomena, in which the aforesaid weakness of evocation manifests itself, and which therefore constitutes, from the practical point of view, what we shall call the minor psychological signs of general paralysis. Failure and slowness in the recall of certain memories. Errors in naming colours. Difficulty in the flow of words. Lapsus calami. Arithmetical errors. Disorder. Incomplete perceptions. Illusions. Inertia of comprehension. Incongruous replies. Grapphage. These are only brief and precise laboratory notes, but they represent the results of tests and observations which we have ourselves made and which others will be able to repeat, verify, and complete. We must of necessity commence by an understanding of the precise facts. Let us analyze each one a little. Failures and slowness in the recall of certain memories. It is known that many of these patients cannot give their address, the number of their street, or the names of their friends. In such an instance, authors readily attribute the trouble to a lack of memory in the patients. In fact, proper names and figures are among the elements that are the most difficult to evoke. When one is fatigued, one has difficulty in remembering proper names or in speaking a foreign language that he knows only slightly. This difficulty of evocation becomes very evident with the aged. It is the first break in the memory. Often one retains the faculty of voluntarily evoking all memories except that of proper names. Those who grow old at the head of a numerous staff know something of this. We cite as an example a patient named Sums, a woman of 42 years who follows the occupation of stocking donor. She has a level of 7 years. She is lively and pleasant and can give much exact information about herself and her family, her past life and her maladies. But whenever she is asked to give a precise figure, she shows herself incapable as to the time of her marriage. At what age were you married? Oh, quite a while ago. And to her belongings? Were you rich? Oh, well, I had a little money, of course. It would be unfortunate to work and not have a sou. Do you think I would spend everything? No, indeed, my money is invested. How much do you have? Oh, a good deal. But how much? Oh, well, I don't remember, but it was quite a little. We could cite many other examples. Naming of colours. It often happens that a general paralytic cannot name the colours exactly. He recognizes the colours very well and also knows their names, but he cannot recall a name at will and he gives another in its place. We have found cases somewhat similar among imbeciles, but the difference is that the imbecile either does not know or partially knows what the paralytic knows, but cannot remember when it is necessary. For example, Colin, a house painter who has a level of 10 years, should, because of his profession, know the colours very well. He is of an intellectual level that should be able to name them, since a normal child of 8 years names them. Colin has nevertheless much difficulty. He says, for red, that is bright red. For yellow, that is pale yellow. For blue, that is dark green. It is dark blue. For green, that is light dark, light yellow. He therefore failed on the blue, and for the green gave a curious reply. Perhaps by light he meant green. In any case, we ask him to repeat, and he says, red, light, yellow, blue, instead of blue, pale green, which is nearly correct. Thus he knows but cannot at once show his knowledge. This inability is truly the most annoying thing that could happen to a candidate during an examination. Difficulty in pronouncing words rapidly. It is the same experiment with a variation which adds to the difficulty. One must not be satisfied with simply naming the colours. They must be named quickly, very quickly, as quickly as possible. Thus the varied functional insufficiencies manifest themselves. Bernard is a woman 45 years old, who has the level of 7 years. We show her a sheet of white paper upon which are pasted 4 papers, red, yellow, blue, green. At our invitation she names them correctly. Then, couldn't you go a little faster? Trying to go fast. Red, green, correcting herself. No, yellow, green, yellow, green. That took 7 seconds, a very long time, because for a normal adult 1.5 seconds suffice. Try again. Red, yellow, no, blue. Thus when she repeats the operation with the idea of going quickly she fails. She has forgotten the name of green. Showing her the green paper, what is that colour? After having put her finger upon the paper and having thought a long time, like chicken eggs, no, duck eggs. Correct, because duck eggs are of a tint of green. Yes, but what do you call it? After a long meditation which lasts 5 seconds, it is green. Name them now as quickly as possible. Red, yellow, blue, green. Still quicker. No. Oh yes. Red, yellow, blue. Slight bewilderment. Green. Time 5 seconds. As quickly as possible. Red, yellow, blue. And that green. Quicker still. No, it isn't fair. Note that the considerable time of 5 seconds to name 4 colours does not contain the time of reaction to a single signal. We measure the duration of the pronunciation of the 4 words, starting with the first word pronounced. With others we give a signal, and as soon as the signal is heard, they must name the 4 colours. We count the total time from the giving of the signal until the word green, the last of the series, is pronounced using our watch that marks the seconds. This rudimentary chronoscope is quite sufficient because the time required is not less than 4 or 5 seconds. It is curious to see patients who, like Sams, have a level of 7 years, and even others who, like Philippon, have a level of 9 years, give such very poor reactions. One of them made an anticipated reaction and said the word before the signal was given. This was pointed out to her. She replied, it was said all the same. Others remained some time without reaction to the signal. We said to one, come now, start. Instead of commencing to pronounce the names of the colours, she laughs and looks at us. Has she forgotten the order? We ask her, what must you do now? Why, I must begin. But she does not start. She does not pronounce a single word. We might have employed a chronoscope for registering the times of reaction of our subjects, but that would have taught us nothing. When the delay and the irregularities are so great, hundredths of a second become insignificant. This is because, in reality, something more than a slowness or a difficulty in the motorification of a word takes place here. The patient has lost the sense of the experiment and cannot recall what has been explained to him about the way to proceed. This is not a slight, limited local trouble, such as every normal person has experienced when fatigued. It is a general confusion in the sense of direction, which makes one forget, to speak familiarly, where one is. We shall speak a little later of this general confusion. Slowness of words and gestures. Another form of the difficulty of evocation. Certain patients show an extreme slowness in replying to questions as simple as these. Point to your nose, your eyes, your mouth. An old woman named Gauze, who has a level of 7 years, was so slow that we had the curiosity to take the time of her gestures. To point to her nose she took 3 seconds, and her eye 4 seconds. Here is a bit of dialogue in which we noted the time which elapsed between the end of our questions and the beginning of her replies. How long since you came here? After 5 seconds. It has been 2 weeks. What is your profession? After 3.5 seconds. I was a cook. How much did you earn a month? After 4 seconds. Oh, that's nothing. When I was through, I went away. They paid me. Is this morning or afternoon? After 2.5 seconds, it is afternoon. If the reader wishes to realize the slowness of the reply, let him take his watch and allow the indicated time to pass. He will thus see the extraordinary pace of our dialogue with Gauze. Other tests show this same trouble of evocation and more complex phenomena. Lapsus calami. There are errors to which normal persons are subject in writing. When one writes quickly, or when one is preoccupied by another thought than the one he is writing, or when one's head is fatigued, or finally when one is writing amidst noise or distractions, it often happens that he skips a word or two. Such lapses are extremely frequent in the writing of general paralytics. Usually dictating a few lines to them will suffice to bring this out. One would certainly not so easily obtain such lapses from a normal person who is either fatigued or absent-minded. Thus we dictate, "In the morning I walk in the country." The patient wrote, "In the morning walk in the country." Or else they wrote prone for promen, omitting the syllable me in the middle of the word. Another to whom had been dictated the sentence, "The pretty little girls study the flowers which they gathered yesterday," wrote, "The pretty girls studied the flowers gathered yesterday." To appreciate the gravity of these omissions, one must take great pains in dictating. If one imprudently dictates words before the patient has finished writing those preceding, one will infallibly lead him to skip what has gone before. But we have a better example. Even in spontaneous writing, the paralytic dement skips words, or rather, what is more serious, leaves a word unfinished and passes to the next. We have before us a letter written by a patient which eulogizes his talents as a painter. In this writing are to be found lapses like the following. "I took extraordinary models from Africa. I made resplendent views. The sky was red." He has written resplem for resplendent. The second part of the word did not form itself under his pen. It is simply to comply with the usage that we call this phenomena forgetfulness. In reality, it is produced by lack of evocation. We do not encounter these lapses so frequently among the morons. When a moron writes, he does not usually omit many words. Errors of arithmetic. For a long while, alienists have found empirically clinical procedures which admirably bring to light the intellectual defects of these dements. Here the instinct of the investigator has gone ahead of his theory. It has been felt that the paralytic must betray himself in arithmetical operations because these operations require a mental application of which he is incapable. Let us first see them counting sous. It is rare that a paralytic succeeds quickly in an exact calculation with sous. Thus Colon, who has a level of 10 years and represents one of our most intelligent patients, counts 17 sous when there are only 16. Most of them are so. They neglect a sou or two, or they forget them. It is the same thing when dressing themselves or buttoning their clothes. Forgetting some of the sous is the same thing as having a dirty beard. It reveals the same mental state. We say negligence because if we call their attention to it and tell them to be more careful, they are able to count without error. When we give them written additions, where there are numbers to be carried, the operation is always difficult for them. One sees many of the paralytics act as though there were no number to be carried. Example, 36 plus 29. He calculates thus, 6 plus 9 equals 16. He writes 16. Then he continues. He says 3 plus 2 equals 5. He writes 5, and obtains a sum of 516. This is not the only error that he commits, but it is the most characteristic since he recalls the process of the operation. In what does this error consist? The subject has not, properly speaking, forgotten the rules of addition, but he does not evoke them at the necessary moment. he does not remember that the 1 of the first sum should be added to the number in the next column. Let us cite the example of Philippon, who has a level of 9 years, and who nevertheless cannot do correctly a sum and addition where there is a number to be carried. Here is a specimen of her work. 4 additions in which she has committed 2 types of errors. First, a frequent error of addition, and second, a constant error of carrying consisting in writing the number to be carried as a separate figure. Furthermore, in the simplest operations, an unbelievable number of errors is possible. We shall cite a few examples. 54 plus 66, 11, 11, 38, 56, 8, 16, 84, 78, 13, 12, 29, 43, 6, 17. Addition executed by Philippon, general paralytic, who has a level of 9 years. In the first place, errors in the arrangement of the figures, as when 4 is to be subtracted from 11, they write 11 below 4 and try to take 11 from 4, or they completely forget the number to be carried, or again, whenever there is a number to be carried, especially if the question is complicated, they abandon the operation in the very midst. The following addition was given to Sam's, 4 plus 12. She counts 4 and 2 are 6, and 1 and 7, and writes only the last figure. Disorder. Another confusion appears in their calculation, which is very curious. Let us suppose them to be doing a problem which requires a multiplication, and afterwards a division. The beginning of the operation is easy enough, then in the midst of it they stop, are lost, and can no longer call up the conditions of the problems. No matter what effort they make, they cannot gather up the thread. This state of disorder may be explained, it seems to us, in the following manner. When one performs a problem, there is a train of reasoning that he follows out. He passes from argument A to argument B, then to C, and then to D, and when he arrives at D, he is still present in his mind C and B and A. He has a perception of the order followed up to the point where he stands, and he sees briefly the whole route that he traversed. If he does not see this clearly, he has at least the feeling for it. This permits him to continue in a direction which is in harmony with the commencement. In the paralytic, this subconscious evocation undergoes an eclipse. The idea flies, it disappears. It is like a signal light that vanishes. One cannot relight it, so it remains in darkness. Another comparison, perhaps better and already used by us, is that of the chessboard. When one is studying the disposal of the pieces, someone passes, hits the board, and all the pieces are jumbled together. It is this chaos that is produced from time to time in the mind of the dement. He is conscious of this and says himself that he no longer knows what he is about. A very simple example is furnished us by a young man, Alexander, whose level is that of 9 years. We say to him after putting money before him, "You are a merchant. Here is money for you to make change from, and here is merchandise to sell. I will buy this box which costs 4 sous. I pay you with a 20-sou piece. How much change will you give me?" This explanation is repeated a great number of times when we say to Alexander, "How much will you give me back?" "Well, 4 sous. I gave you back 4 sous. Here they are." And he gives us the 4 sous. "Let us see, how much was the box?" 4 sous. "And I gave you how much?" 50 centimes. Showing him the 1 franc piece. "I gave you how much?" 1 franc. He had inadvertently made an error, having mistaken a 1 franc piece for 50 centimes, but this was not his only error. "So you should give me back how much?" 16. 16 and 5, that makes 21. 21 and 3, that makes 24. "You will give me, then, 23. 23 sous. You need still more. 7, 3, and 7, 30, and 6, 36. This would be pure gibberish if we had not followed step by step the ideas of Alexander, and if we had not taken into account the manner in which he reasoned. Let us analyze. We obtained the first point. He is conscious that he should give us back 16 sous, but immediately afterwards he loses his direction. Seeing some sous before him on the table, he thinks he must add them to that sum of 16. So he adds the pieces of 5 sous, which is on the table, then 3 sous, which makes 24, and he thinks that he should give back 24 sous. Here is a slight lapse, for having announced 24, he forgets and believes that it is 23. Then, seeing that we still wait, he has the idea of continuing his addition. To the 23 sous he adds all that he finds upon the table. First 7 sous, which makes 30 sous, then 6 sous, which makes 36 sous. In reality, he is completely lost because he has abandoned his first idea and seems no longer to think of it. It is important to note that the operation does not, by any means, surpass his knowledge. His intellectual level, the proof of this is given in what follows. Well then, let us begin again. The box costs 4 sous. I gave you 1 franc. Well then, you should give me back, in a clear tone without hesitation, 16 sous. It is characteristic of these losses of functioning that the subject knows how to do the problem submitted to him. He has a knowledge, but from time to time the power fails him. To Colon, the house painter, who is a level of 10 years, we gave a simple written subtraction to do. 25 minus 9. He wrote 25 and put the 9 below the 5. Calculate. 9 and 5, 14. I carry 1. 1 and 2, 3, 34. He has forgotten that he was to subtract, and he makes an addition. The operation takes 30 seconds. So 25 less 9, that makes 34? Yes, sir, thinking it over. Oh no, he calculates again. 5 and 9, 14. I carry 1. 1 and 2, 3. He repeats the same error. He has shown that he was wrong in making the addition. He starts again the same way. But I said 25 minus 9. So 25 minus 9, that makes 34. Oh, no, that makes 25 minus 9. That makes 21. Calculate out loud. 25, 34, less 9. 34 less 9, that makes 20. 25 less 9, 15, 16. That makes only 16. Yes, 25 less 9, that makes 16. This second operation has taken 1 minute and 50 seconds, which is enormous time if one takes the pains to realize it watch in hand. Notice that he has reached the true solution, which is to be expected since he has the level of 10 years, but he has not attained the end without losing himself 3 times on the way. It was necessary each time to expressly demand, is the result correct? To make him perceive that he has made an addition instead of a subtraction. This loss of direction indeed supposes an insuffice of evocation. To follow a direction, the directing idea must be prolonged either unconsciously or by short successive recurrences. Here we have seen with what facility it disappears. We now come to the phenomena of reception, perception, comprehension of that which goes on about the individual. In these phenomena of reception, the absence of evocation also makes itself felt. Here the sense of the word is a little diverted from its usage, because it is no longer a question of memory properly, so called, but of perception. We must admit, however, that in the formation of a perception there is implied a recalling. We perceive an object only because the stimulus of the sensation evokes some former knowledge, some acquired images. It is these implied evocations in every exterior perception which are badly formed in the general paralytic. Some unusual phenomena result from this. We are going to study some of these phenomena, notably the incomplete perceptions. Incomplete perceptions. In incomplete perceptions, the sensation which ought to be the point of departure of the evocation are indeed felt, but only certain ones of these sensations make the evocations, the others rest inert. Therefore, an incomplete fragmentary perception results, which one can very simply illustrate by the use of playing cards. Madame Gauze knows these cards. When asked to name these presented to her, she indicates the suit correctly. For the value, she is often obliged to count with her fingers. If a card is presented to her, and she is asked simply to name it, she usually indicates either the suit or the value, rarely both. Example: a list is displayed on the page. Card shows replies of subject. Is there here a defect of perception or a defect of evocation of the name? It matters little. The essential thing is to record that there is a defect. Another example shows the same defect, the same negligence being produced also by cards, but under rather different conditions. We show the woman Philippon the 9 of clubs. Is that a clubs? How many of clubs? The 7. With surprise? Ah. Oh no, the 9. I am mistaken. You must remember that it is the 9. Certainly. We place the card in a pack which is presented to her. Find it now. Gaily. Sure. I must find it, my card. She looks at the cards one by one and makes 2 piles, one of the red, the other black, with errors from time to time in this useless assortment. During this operation, the 9 of clubs passes under her eyes. Saluting the card, "Here it is, my beauty, come, my old friend." But instead of taking out the card, she puts others on top of it. We say to her, "You have not found the card, give it to me." "Oh, yes, I found it. It is the 9, and here it is." She hands us the 7 of clubs, which she has just found, but then she shows a slight hesitation, and perceiving the 8 of clubs, which came next, she hands that instead of the 7. "Is that really the card that you were to give me?" Without looking at the card, "I am not mistaken." "Is it really the one?" "I tell you I am not mistaken." "Come now, look at the card. Show me the 8 of clubs. What is this card that you give me?" "It is the 8. "And you should give me?" "The 9. "And you have not given it to me?" In a familiar tone. "Rascal!" She hunts in the pile and finds the 10 of clubs and says, "Here is the 10 of clubs. The 9 is not far away." This illustration shows several things: a defect of application of the right name, negligence, power of action inferior to knowledge. Illusions in exterior perceptions. We shall group with partial perceptions certain psychological phenomena which have an entirely different aspect, but which depend upon the same fragmentary character of the perception. When our patient, to whom we show the 6 of hearts, tells us simply that it is 6, he forms an incomplete perception, but incomplete as it is, the name remains correct, because a suit and their value in a playing card are distinct facts to be noted. It is no longer the same when the perception bears upon a collection of objects, a picture or an engraving. Each of the elements in such a group has a significance which depends at the same time upon itself and upon the rest. If one perceives it separately, one may be deceived as to its nature. Therefore, the number of errors which these patients make upon pictures is very great. Philippon, 9-year level, to whom we show a picture representing a prisoner standing on his bed to look out of a narrow window, imagines that the man is perched on a rock. Burns sees in the card of the ragman a horse which does not exist. Gauze, allowing her indolent glance to wander over a picture representing a poor old man and a woman seated on a bench, gives the following information. What is there, here? A man who is all white, and then his wife who is all black, if the man appears to her all white, when it doubtless because of his white beard. And what else? That, as shown the trunk of a tree, and there a bench. And what besides? A spoon. A spoon? Where is it? There, I think that is a spoon. Astonishing illusion. The scene certainly takes place on a boulevard. Where does she see a spoon? Show me where the spoon is. She follows with her finger the picture of a street lamp. Thus she mistakes for a spoon the street lamp, which in this case would be very large and planted in the ground. We persist. But where is all this which is happening? Well, it is a man who is white and his wife who is black. But are they in the house? Where are they? They are on a bench. Are they in the country, by the road? Well, there wouldn't be things along a road. What kind of things? Well, there is no housekeeping on a road. Not clear. But listen, here are trees. Yes. Then it is in a garden. Yes. How could there be a spoon like that in a garden? I don't know. I said a spoon, as I would say anything else. This illustrates the illusion of the senses among these patients, an isolated perception which is false, which is not correlated with the rest, and which is not corrected. Illusions in verbal perceptions. Here it is a question of perceiving and understanding a sentence pronounced by another person. Every sentence is a composition of words, each of which has not only its own sense, but a sense determined by the rest of the sentence. If one perceives but one word of the sentence, or but a single syllable, he may build upon it a perception, which will be not only incomplete, but above all erroneous. These verbal illustrations, though not very frequent, often occur among general paralytics. We have noted a certain number of them. Gauze, before whom we talk and exchange the remark, Nous avons oublié que ça. We have forgotten that. Says to us spontaneously, Je suis né en Epernay. I was born in Epernay. It is probable that she perceived the isolated sound oubli and interpreted it to be où est né. Another, Byrne, hearing one of us say to the other, "N'est ce pas?" "Is that not so?" was impressed simply by the sound and understood Espagne, Spain, and said to us, "In Spain, you know, they are very false. In Portugal, they work." I lived with a French woman. Out of this came a description of her life as a housemaid. Thus partial perceptions may give place to verbal illusions, but we repeat this phenomenon is quite rare. Inertia of comprehension. The study of verbal illusions, as well as that of incomplete perceptions, puts us back upon the track of the more general phenomenon, that of the inability to comprehend the thought of others. We have often been struck by the difficulty which certain patients feel in understanding our verbal explanations. The least complicated explanation often does not penetrate. This is therefore a very serious obstacle when making psychological experiments upon them, because a psychological experiment is always dependent upon the primary condition that the explanatory remarks be understood. It is only after this first requirement is realized that no one can go on with the experiment. What illustrations we could give of this difficulty in understanding. Here, for instance, is the old woman, Gauze, who is a level of 7 years and who, besides, knows how to count. We show her 4 single sous and ask her, "How many are there?" She replies correctly, 4 sous. We take away 1 and add 3 double sous, which make 9 sous. We ask her again, "How many are there now?" She replies, 6 sous. As this is incorrect, we say to her, "Count aloud." She commences to count, counting only the double ones, and says, 2, 4, 6 sous. Here is the rest of the dialogue. "How? There are only 6 sous. Ah, with those 3 sous there. Count again." We imagine she is going to count the single sous with the double ones. Not at all. She looks attentively at each sou and says, "A republic. 1 sou, 2 sous." The idea of counting, although it's so natural when one sees money, has disappeared. We are obliged to insist in order to make it return. How much money does that make, all that? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here at last is the exact count. So she knows how to count, but she is not able to grasp the idea that she must do it. This instructive scene ends by the following remarks from the patient. "My husband," he says, "you ought to go to school." "Very well, I am very sorry because I shall never get away." She weeps. "So it was a doctor who said I must go away from home. I did not know that it was here." Figure 20 is displayed on the page. Merely Philippon, general paralytic. Intellectual level of 9 years. Note the smile of satisfaction and disarranged toilet. Here is another typical example of the difficulty in understanding. We wish to have someone repeat numbers in a descending order, for example, to start at 20 and recite the lower ones, 19, 18, 17 to 0. For a normal, this explanation would be sufficient. As soon as our brief instructions were given, he would commence to pronounce the figures in the indicated order. He might be obliged to go very slowly, or he might commit many errors. The execution of the experiment might be more or less defective, but the idea of the experiment would have been grasped. Figure 21 is displayed on the page. Profile of Merely Philippon. Let us now take a general paralytic and see how much time and explanation are required for him. Philippon has a level of 9 years and consequently retains considerable intelligence. We give the entire detail of the test. Will you count backwards beginning with 20 as far as 0? Do you understand? With a satisfied air, "That is not difficult." We'll begin. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. "No, not that. You must count as I do. 20, 19, 18, 17, and so on, down to 0. With a nod of acquiescence, "Yes." Commence. 20. Let's say 10. "No, say 20, 19, 18, and then?" 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 1000. There. "But no, listen to me. You are going to do as I do. I will do it first. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Do you understand?" "Yes." 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. "But no." Continuing. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But no, continuing, 14, 16, 17. But no, stop, that is not it. It is in the other direction you must count. Yes, I counted forwards. You must count backwards, 20, 19. 20, 19, prompting, 18, and then 20, so 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. Listen, do as I do. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Oh, very well. I will do like that. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 12, 13, 10. I've lost it. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Well, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And to go on, 25, 30, etc. She took 35 seconds to count backwards, a considerable time. Try to go quicker, 20, 19. 36, 37. No, not like that. 20, 19, 18. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 16, 15. I've lost it. 14, 14, 13, 12, 11, 11. 10, 10, 9, 8, 8, 6, 5, 3, 2, and 1. This time it required 45 seconds. In analysing this long attempt, it can be seen that our patient has understood only because we have had the patience to give her 6 complete explanations, while in general a single one suffices. But notice that this woman knew very well how to count backwards, since she finally succeeded. It is not, therefore, the knowledge that is lacking, but the comprehension of what is asked of her. All this is a remarkable example of inertia of comprehension. We ask Vigny, how many fingers have you on the right hand? She asks to have the question repeated. On the right hand, I have 2 hands. But how many fingers have you on the right hand? I have 10. On the right hand, I ask you on the right hand. How many fingers have you? Very well, I have 2, showing both hands. No, on your right hand, how many fingers? She only gives a questioning, astonished look. How many fingers have you on the right hand? Ah, I don't know what you mean. We put exactly the same question to her sometimes afterwards. Well, I have 5. And on the left hand? Oh, well, I have 5. And on both? Well, that makes 10. She knows then how to reply and to give the very simple information that is asked of her, but she does not understand what is wished of her. This continual lack of comprehension often prevents their taking part in a directed conversation. A very striking contrast, by the way, with what we have observed among imbeciles. In a disconnected conversation, especially if one follows their lead, they may, for a time, give a false impression of the value of their intelligence, as they habitually show a greater fluency than imbeciles, but a precise and definite questioning immediately brings out their deterioration. Psychologically, lack of comprehension consists in the absence of suggestion of ideas. A person who understands has a train of ideas following the words heard, and the ideas correlate with the words. A person who does not understand, to whom one speaks, for example, an unknown language, hears the sounds, but the evocation of ideas does not take place, or possibly ideas are evoked, whose falsity is at once discernible. Among our patients we sometimes observe, in cases such as we have just cited, a complete absence of evocation, or at least if the absence is not rigorously absolute, which probably never occurs, it is sufficiently striking for the patient to have the feeling that he is not understood, or indeed the idea evoked to be insignificant. But now and then a false idea is produced which constitutes a contradiction. This contradiction manifests itself more clearly in 2 somewhat different cases where the phenomena is a little more complicated, which we shall call graphage, grafting, and incongruous replies. In lack of comprehension there is only inertia disclosing itself by a negative state, a repose. In graphage there is a certain intellectual activity. End of section 25. Section 26 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon. Translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. This LibriVox recording is the public domain. Recorded by Leon Harvey. Chapter 2. The Minor Psychological Signs of General Paralysis. Part 2. Graphage. In a conversation, a propos of a poorly understood question, for example, or a picture to be interpreted, it has often happened that a general paralytic does not content himself with an irrelevant reply, but grafts upon it the aimless development of an idea. Let us cite examples. Sames is in the act of repeating words that have been given her, and this is her way that graphage occurs. Papa, Papa, shoe, hat, shoe, the hat. I am cold, I am very hungry. I am cold, I am very hungry. I have a handkerchief, I have a clean hands. Nowise distracted. Of course I have. You did not repeat. Oh, yes, I did say it. Useless to argue, let us continue. Giving a sentence to repeat. My name is Gaston. Oh, the dreadful dog. That's true. So it's a dog, that's all right. Giving with energetic accent a new sentence to repeat. It rains in the garden, Joseph is doing his lessons. That's good. You have repeated? Oh, yes. What did you say? I said that was good. Joseph works well then. Let us notice what happens. When the repetition is easy, Sames does not fail. When the sentence becomes longer and the repetition is consequently more difficult, Sames ceases to make the necessary effort to reproduce the sentence verbatim. She fixes her attention upon the idea expressed by the sentence, and the grafting begins. Another example furnished by Byrne. We have her repeat some sentences. She does it correctly, then the grating begins. My name is Gaston. Oh, the dreadful dog. Oh, the bad dog. I had Tour, a pretty bulldog. We enjoy ourselves greatly. I have caught a mouse. Oh, yes, I have caught a mouse. There were rats above. There is a granary, etc. Here is a similar example of grafting in the definitions. What is a fork? A fork is a fork. I have 3 of silver, but they are marked. What is a horse? There are horses at Corbenet. I have seen cows and ducks, they lay eggs, and then the chickens. There are chickens. Yes, ducks lay eggs, etc. The same is true with Philippon. Papa, Mama. Papa, Mama, my sister, my brother, cousins, plenty of them. My cousin who is, etc. Shoe, hat. Shoe, hat. I have a beautiful hat with violets. It is cold. I am hungry. Oh yes, on the contrary, it is warm. I am hungry. I hope to go home to have good things to drink and eat. We never get enough. It is like the 2 ladies there. They have eaten nothing this evening. It is too long. It is necessary to force everybody at Grinnell. I shall stop to get my watch, and then I am going to have my teeth pulled, etc. We enjoy ourselves greatly. I have caught a mouse. Oh, the poor little creature. I would love to have one of those little creatures in a cage. I used to sell matches and birds at the market. I have done everything. I did then as well as my sister-in-law, etc. Exactly what is this graphage from the psychological point of view? It supposes indeed a certain inertia of comprehension, because a patient who understood clearly that he was to repeat a sentence and nothing else would avoid adding whole sentences of his own invention. In addition to this, there is nonsense, that is to say, an absence or a weakness of direction. There is also a certain cerebral activity that manifests itself under a form which has no need of reflection nor of effort. At first thought, this intellectual activity seems contradictory to our hypothesis of inertia of evocation. If all their ideas were struck with inertia, how would this garrulity be possible? It is because the inertia of evocation may manifest itself by the failure to evoke the correct idea, the precise one which is needed, and while the only idea of which there is need is not aroused, a swarm of other ideas rush in which are indifferent or really false. Incongruous replies. Here are some singular replies. They are not absolutely lacking in sense, but they have no relation to the question. These replies are frequent among certain general paralytics, but not among all. So far as we know, they have not been pointed out up to the present. They have, without doubt, passed unperceived, and we understand why, because we ourselves did not notice them for a long time. We collected them in our stenographic work without realizing their import. When one of our patients made an incongruous reply, we disregarded it. We attributed it to some casual circumstance without significance. For instance, we supposed that our patient, in listening to us, had a moment's distraction, or perhaps that he was hard of hearing. Here are some fragments of these dialogues. We choose our examples, of course, from the clearest cases. Not all cases are equally incongruous. We ask Oleg, who was once a cabman in his own account, and later was a coachman for another. Why did you go out of business for yourself? The hackney coaches. Yes, but why did you go out of business? Yes, I had coachmen. But why did you quit? Because went home. Then I hired out to some employees. Yes, but you had been proprietor. Why did you cease? Because I had enough. Because I had to work myself. However mediocre this last reply, he might have given it at first. How long did you stay with your employer? Oh, I stayed a long time with him, 3 years. Where were you before? I was in business myself. Where was that? For 15 years. He replies with a question of address by information about the time. We ask another patient, a woman, 36 years old. Madame, what is your name? Louise Pauline. How old are you? I am number 3. Incomplete reply. Let us see, what did you say? It was in the blind alley barrier. She lived right easily enough. Number 3, blind alley barrier. She gives her address when asked her age. But how old are you? 36 years old. And what year were you born? In Crêpe, Sion-et-Loire. She was born in Crêpy-en-Valois, Oise. How is that? How is that? In what year were you born, I ask? I don't know, because I was little at the time. She replies by giving the place of her birth, then when asked to give the date again. How much does your husband earn? His name is Van Berg. There is a H at the end. How much does he earn? How is that? How much does your husband earn? His name is Van Berg. Yes, but how much does he earn? I don't know what he earns. And you? What do you do? Yes, he has a lame foot. He got a splinter in his foot. Same remark. She gives her husband's name when asked how much he earns. Byrne, a woman of 40 who has a level of 7 years, abounds in incongruous replies. At what age were you married? I kept house for 12 years. This is not a reply to the question. How old will you be when you are 100 years old? I will be old. I won't go to 100 years, nor my husband either. But how old will you be when you are 100 years old? I won't go to 100 years. Again an answer which does not fit the question. We ask a Sams, are you a lady or a gentleman? Laughing, oh, I am not a gentleman, oh. Are you a little boy? I have none. Always the same incongruity. All these nonsensical replies suppose that the question has only been partially understood by the patients. They understand that a question has been asked. They even understand some words of the question or its general sense, but they do not grasp it in its integrity, nor get its shade of meaning. So the reply is indirect. It is the same mechanism as that which produces partial perceptions. The mechanism is as follows. Not all the words heard evoke their appropriate images. There is only a fragmentary perception of the sentence. Although a circumstance important to note, the question asked is not about the intelligence of the patient. It suffices as a rule to insist, to raise the voice, to arouse the attention in order to destroy this psychic deafness and finally to obtain a correct reply. Furthermore, a development of ideas is produced by inertia. The patient in whom an idea has been previously awakened continues it, without asking himself if it applies to the present case. The following example is characteristic. To Bernard, show me your right ear. Here it is. She points to it. Show me your left hand. These are my little ears. She continues to think of her ears either because she does not understand the new question or because she finds it difficult to leave the first question. It is inertia, but it is the inertia of movement, the continuation of an impulse, a ball which continues to roll. In that which precedes, we have taken no account of the clinical signs by which one habitually recognizes general paralysis. These signs are too complex, and at the same time they are known in too exact a manner to serve in the building up of a psychological theory. Indeed, they are known chiefly through the testimony of relatives or sometimes by the very incomplete accounts given by the patients themselves. It only remains to be seen whether they contradict the observations which we have here presented. It seems to us that they do not. An important fact which has struck all alienists is that it is by his state of being and his acts, rather than by the disorder of his speech, that a patient betrays the change which takes place. The acts which attract the attention are variable. They differ according to the individual, according to circumstances, according to chance. They may be classed as errors and negligence, forgetting important matters, destroying useful things, delays, abandoning of work for no reason, faults of housekeeping, for example, meals not ready on time, the food too salty or burned, useless expenditure, carelessness of dress, and lastly delinquent acts, robbery, petty thieving, indecencies, etc. Among these clinical facts we shall choose only one, which is very characteristic and which may be observed as soon as the patient enters the asylum. But it is the unconsciousness which he shows in relation to his new situation. Many cannot find that direction. They do not know where they are. They know neither the day, the month, or the hour of the day. They do not, therefore, take into account the little external signs which should permit them to orient themselves. A patient, writes Kraepelin, replies that it is January notwithstanding there are fresh cherries on the table. We recall having seen a woman about 50 years of age who was only at the beginning of her malady, and who in her conversation showed herself so intelligent, so sensible, that one would not suspect any intellectual weakening. Yet already she showed that indifference to her surroundings which is so characteristic of her paralytic dementia. To thoroughly understand this indifference, and above all to judge of it, let us imagine how a perfectly normal person would feel if he were locked up in an asylum. Let us put ourselves in the place of such a person. The most careless of us would be disturbed and irritated by this sequestration. We should want to know where we were and why we were locked up. The first time our patient was brought to the office and introduced to us, she seated herself tranquilly in a chair, drew her glasses from their case, and began to read the paper as if she did not understand that it would be her interest to know who we were and what we wanted of her. Note that she had only just been brought to the hospital. There was therefore in her lack of comprehension of the surroundings a state which resembled, metaphorically, that of partial perception. It was as though she saw only the table, the chairs, the wholly material part of the office, and perceived nothing beyond, and not realized that the office belonged to a hospital, and that the hospital enclosed her like prison. The ease with which such patients accept their sequestration was long ago noted by alienists. It is sometimes the only sign which they give of their intellectual weakening. In everything else they seem normal. With others the trouble takes on a slightly different form. They demand the release every time they see the physician, but they do not seem to remember that the previous day they asked the same thing in identical terms, and moreover that has led to nothing, and that during the interval of the visits of the physician they paid no more heed to their release and spoke of it to no one. It seems to us that nothing in all these diverse facts is contrary to the explanation which we have given of the lack of power of evocation. To forget important objects, neglect to salt the food, or salt it twice, or again to lose the sense of propriety, of modesty, or even of duty, all this attributed according to the case of loss of memory, of judgment, of attention, to the I have forgotten, I did not pay attention. But all this should be explained, as we think, by a weakening of the power of evocation of ideas and feelings. The last idea does not reappear, and hence forgetfulness, inattention. The critical sense which would inhibit the grotesque or moral act does not awaken, and hence the loss of judgment or of moral sense. One has therefore no trouble in harmonizing clinical facts with the theory which we have just outlined. But let it be clearly understood that we prefer to rely upon personal and direct observations rather than clinical histories which are too often obtained second-hand. Clinical facts will not serve to construct or to demonstrate our theory. Let us content ourselves with proving that they do not contradict it. 3. Considerations upon the difficulty of functions, its extent and its character. We have already cited a great number of examples of this lack of evocation, which we believe to be characteristic of paralytic dementia. We have been able to note that according to the domains considered, the phenomenon of evocation takes on different aspects. For the acts of memory it constitutes forgetfulness. For movements and acts it shows itself either by lapses in writing or by a lack of continuity in occupations. For perceptions it is equivalent to defect, almost to anesthesia, that is, as it were, psychic deafness. At other times the same phenomenon has been designated under the name of lack of attention, or distraction, or negligence. But under these different aspects, and in spite of this varying terminology, we always find a weakening of the same faculty. the faculty of evocation. In the light of all these observations, this faculty appears as one of the most important parts of the intellectual mechanism. It does not constitute solely an awakening and isolated memory. It is not limited to a mere detail of the memory function. It comes into play in all intellectual operations. It furnishes them their necessary food because all intellectual work is performed by means of ideas, and these ideas need to be evoked. Let us illustrate exactly what happens. That which we use for work is not at all a single idea which is illuminated for a moment and is quickly extinguished, like someone who has only one gas jet which he successfully lights and extinguishes. In reality, every work supposes a considerable number of ideas which have sometimes been called a constellation. For an instant we have need, for example, of idea 1. Then to continue the work commenced, 1 must be eclipsed, and ideas 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quickly illuminated. Then 1 returns to 1. Then 1 has need of 7 and 8. Then they are extinguished, and 1 lights 2, 3, 4, etc. So the work goes on by successive extinguishings and relights, which require that the whole range of ideas remain ready for active service. This is what assures the continuity of work, and what gives us the impression of its continuity notwithstanding the discontinuity of the lighting. It is this which permits a certain direction to be followed continually, a theme to be developed in all its ramifications. To sum up, this is the important phenomenon of which the cases heretofore studied have given us only slight examples. It is this broad sense which must be given to the phenomenon of evocation of the states of consciousness. And consequently, when we say that the work of evocation is imperiled in paralytic dementia, it is as if we said that the whole operation of thought is rendered difficult. But we must go farther. Upon the whole, evocation is only one example of mental functioning, and however important this may be, it does not include all the rest. Mental functioning supposes many other forms of activity. There exists not only an evocation of the states of consciousness, but besides an acquisition, a fixation of these states, and when they are evoked, they must be worked over, that is to say, compared, judged, combined, amplified, or on the contrary, analyzed, reduced, or perhaps contradicted, neutralized, or inhibited. Why should the reproduction of the states of consciousness be the only disordered part in all the mental mechanism? There is no reason to omit it. On the contrary, there is reason to suppose that our subjects are affected in all their mental operations, whatever they may be. To shorten this demonstration, we shall cite only one well-known example. It is the difficulty which a general paralytic experiences in fixing new impressions. All alienists know that they learn poorly. We give a simple test which very clearly illustrates this difficulty. Using a red crayon, we draw a head on a large sheet of white paper, placed before the patient. When it is finished, we say, "This is Ernest." Then by its side we draw another figure using a blue crayon and say, "This is Louis." Lastly, we draw a third with a black crayon and say, "This is Anton." Then repeating we say, "This is Ernest, this is Louis, this is Anton." Pay attention to the names, what I give them, Ernest, Louis, Anton. In this way we have named each figure 3 times in succession each time the figure was pointed out. If one plays this little game with a general paralytic, one will be surprised at the difficulty that the patient finds retaining these 3 names and in applying them correctly. Thus Philippon, the woman with a level of 9 years, cannot recall anything after the first instruction, which, as we have said, consists in naming the figures to her 3 times. After a second lesson composed like the first of 3 namings, she makes a mistake and names them in the following order: Louis, Ernest, Antoine. It requires a third lesson similar to the 2 preceding ones, for the 3 figures to be finally named correctly. Sams, another general paralytic, a little lower than the preceding, having a level of 7 years, fails still more strikingly. After the first lesson, she says, "Very well. Louis, Antoine. How about it? Joseph." The name of Joseph has not been spoken. After the second lesson, she is sure that she can repeat it correctly. She says, "Sure enough, Antoine. How about it? What is his name? I don't remember." After a third lesson, she says, "Louis Antoine, yes, his name is Antoine." Without further comment and without the necessity for bringing in terms of comparison, it is evident that these defects in exact repetition after so many lessons denote a profound weakening of the memory for acquired knowledge. The task to be performed was not only the conservation of several impressions, it was also necessary not to become confused, but to give the correct name to each figure. We demanded of the memory a certain gymnastic feat, which is evidently very easy for an adult, or for a child of 9 years, but which is singularly embarrassing for our subjects. We reproduced this example at some length in order to show that the phenomena of deficiency in these paralytics extends not to evocation alone. That evocation is only one example, which in fact we offer because it is clear, precise, and easily demonstrable, but we willingly admit, although the proof has not been rigorously made, that among general paralytics all forms of intellectual functioning are affected. Will it be possible to indicate further how this is true, and in what the obstacle consists? For a long while we have mentioned upon these facts, and at first we believed that we could explain all the psychology of general paralysis by a diminution of voluntary effort. We said repeatedly that what is characteristic of the general paralytic is the impossibility of making an effort. This explanation seems to us now only partially correct. We take it up here only to pass beyond it. At first sight one sees clearly that many of the tests in which the patients fail demand a slight effort. Thus it requires an effort to count backwards or to work rapidly either in counting figures or in turning a handle. On the other hand, it is particularly when one creates a slight difficulty for them that their intellectual incapacity shows itself. If one is contented with carrying on a colourless conversation with them, such as many people use while visiting, talking of nothing but the weather or the servants, they can reply to such commonplace remarks by others which are of equal value, for such remarks belong to their level, but in reality they cannot make an effort. Let it be understood also that if they are prevented from making an effort, it is not because of a special attitude of the will or of the character. They are neither sulky, stubborn, nor peevish, like certain of our imbeciles who positively refuse to submit to our experiments, when they could easily execute them if they were only willing. Nor do they resemble those other imbeciles who, because of a feeling of deference, do their best, like good children. The paralytic ordinarily shows neither willingness nor annoyance, but rather a very particular mental state of indifference, which is sui generis in this particular malady. But in order to explain all that takes place in them, it is not sufficient to assert that they are powerless to make an effort. That would be an error in interpretation. The effort is nothing else than an additional apparatus which gives more power to the intellectual machine, as the advancing of the spark is a particular condition which gives more speed to an automobile. But one uses these reinforcements only when there is an unusual object to conquer. Under ordinary conditions the intelligence functions without effort, but just so with our dements, the ordinary conditions do not suffice because what is easy for an all has become difficult for them. Let us recall the examples that we have given before. The citation of proper names and of figures which comes at the first call of a normal memory is no longer possible with them. The dividing of the attention between two different elements, for example, the colour and the value of a card, can no longer be made. The memory of a sentence is disturbed if we merely dictate a new position while the subject is finishing the writing of the first part. These are failures of evocation and not disturbances in the production of effort. In order to agree with our previous explanation, it would, however, be correct to say that among paralytic dements the faculty of evocation functions with difficulty, and that because of some aggravating circumstance the faculty of effort, which might serve to compensate for this difficulty of functioning, is often equally affected, which renders the case irredeemable. All this reminds one of a village where there is not only a fire, but where the firemen are absent. The disaster is doubled, but the direct cause is the fire. The absence of the firemen only aggravates it. The correctness of our interpretation is proved by what happens to our patients when they chance to be still capable of effort. Thus Jonas, an aged woman who seems intelligent in spite of her decay, confided to us one day something of which we give the exact reproduction. "I have to take great pains," she said, "when I try to remember what day it is, and again, you must believe that I do all I can. It makes me angry that I cannot overcome it, this apathy. There is with her then a slight power of effort, or the idea of effort, the willingness to try, but that is not sufficient. Her effort cannot conquer that state which she calls apathy, and which, in our opinion, constitutes an inertia of functioning. This proves, therefore, that it is not alone by the absence of effort that these patients are characterized. The absence of effort, when it occurs, as it frequently does, only aggravates the inertia of functioning which constitutes the essential character of the mentality of general paralytics. Is this term inertia exactly correct? This is the last question that we shall discuss in this chapter. For those who have read attentively what we have written, there can be no doubt. The troubles revealed so far with our patients consist especially in not doing any one thing, or in doing it incompletely, or in making mistakes in doing it, or in doing it with an excessive slowness. All of this is expressed exactly by the term inertia, and the words seem all the more fitting because so many of the patients have a heavy, stupid look with slow gestures, thick speech, and inexpressive countenance, and they appear fatigued. Although when questioned upon this point, they assure us that they are not tired, and even that they never feel so. All these facts harmonize, and it seems to us that we may well apply to these functional troubles the term inertia. Nevertheless, we find many patients who do not at all correspond to this conception. They are those who have delirious ideas and who fabricate a great number of them, and who therefore show a strong intellectual activity. Delirium is sufficiently frequent among general paralytics for certain authors to believe themselves justified in ascribing this delirium as a representation of their mental state. It would seem difficult, at least at first sight, to admit that a delirious patient has functional inertia. Here is Ramanot, a young man of about 25 years of age, who is worthy of being studied at length. Let us interrupt ourselves to examine him in detail. The first time that we saw him, he overflowed with satisfaction, seating himself squarely in his chair, tipping himself backwards and twisting his thumbs while regarding us with a gleam in his black eye. What have you to tell us? Always fortune in abundance, always happy. What would you have? One always turns them, the thumbs. There is nothing else to do to be happy. Always in the 30 million who smile at you. It is his favourite idea that he is soon to be declared by failures. We try to make him talk freely upon this theme while we confine ourselves to listening. He speaks slowly, searching for little words, and a good deal for his ideas. What are you going to do? Well, we are going to march according to honour all over Europe. We are very good friends from all countries. We can march with head erect, with high hats. I do not know how to wear a high hat. I'm going to wear a soft hat because a soft hat is more becoming to me than a high hat. One always smiles, always. When one feels that everybody adores you, that makes you happy. Oh, that good M. Failures. I want him to sign next to me. Mine is the last signature. It is he who is going to decorate me, and you know that everybody is happy. I press to my heart the cross of the Legion of Honour on my heart when he says, the powers which devolve upon me. He will not embrace me, but his heart will be in it, etc., etc. Upon our invitation, the patient is pleased to dictate to us a letter to Failures. Here it is reproduced exactly. Bonsoir, le Président Failures. I thank you for all the goodness which you have shown me. I am happy to have the good wishes which you have shown me in your company, as have all the presidents of the Republic, who are happy to have me in their power, and I will always do my duty towards all the comrades who are under our orders, and all the people are happy to amuse themselves with the 30 millions of which we are in possession. Everybody will be happy, will dance, will ride on bicycle morning and night, and as soon as we are returned from the bicycle ride, we will have a good meal, and after the meal we will dance until we receive further orders, and then we will continue during the whole year. We will attend the vintage, we will drink good wine, we will all go up into the vat, and as soon there will be no need of a wine press. He laughs. To take the grapes, and we will taste the good wine, and after each meal we will take a glass of wine of codfish, which would do us enormous good. I am happy for the decoration which I have the pleasure of wearing. I greet cordially all the presidents of the Republic, and with all my heart. Also signed, all the presidents of the Republic. Ramont Louis. At another time we wish to arouse some doubts in his mind concerning the object of his delirium, or to scrutinize the reasons upon which he based his belief in the story of his decoration. The following dialogue takes place. You have seen Ferliers? I have always been in his service. From the time I was born, I was always in his service. As domestic? In no wise offended. As friend, as present, and for my goodness, he decorated me with the greatest decoration, and the same for all my brothers. But you, have you seen him? Yes, absolutely. Where did you see him? At Longchamps, where everyone passes. But did he speak to you? Like a brother. To you? Personally. At Longchamps? At Longchamps. Did he then have hallucinations? You believe that? Even last year I found myself face to face with him in the woods. And then I applauded. Did he get down from his carriage to speak to you? Listen to his reply. I did not have that trouble because after the offerings I made him that went from my place to his. Did he shake hands with you? Never. He is frank. There was no hallucination. But how do you know he is going to decorate you? By the praises he has given me, and it is because of this that he gives me the decoration that I merit and my certificate of good conduct, and the flag will not be forgotten. But how do you know it? Has he told you? He has not told me personally. How do you know it then? By the tone of his voice. When he reads that to the people. What? He will proclaim it to all the soldiers. But suppose you are deceived. Oh, I do not believe it. With friends like you, I do not believe it. His amiability extends to us even when we contradict him. And if Ferliers do not decorate you? Oh, I don't doubt that. I am persuaded because the crosses are already upon his desk. You have seen them? Oh no, but I see them from here. That is indeed a proof. I see all the crosses lined up. But really, you are not sure? Certain. To Dr. Simon, who is present, that is very well organized. It could not be better organized. But you have not seen them, the crosses? Gentlemen, my friends, you have seen them as I have, and you too will have one of them, and we will pass at Longchamps before the soldiers. I also? Oh, everybody, all the staff officers, even the dogs. He does not see the absurdity of the idea. The dogs too, the dogs are friends. There will be a tiny decoration for them too. Little bows, we will be in line. But come now, the decorations. You have not seen them. It is an idea you have in your head. It is an idea of grandeur. Let us try to batter down his idol. Ferliers is ugly. He is ugly, but he is good as milk. When he gets angry, he breaks everything. He must not break the decoration, that's sure. What would you do? I would weep. And afterwards? Oh well, I would laugh. One can see here a curious character, the disconnected nature of the emotional life of the invalid. You are too young to be decorated. But I have a good heart. It is there. Why do you say that your heart is good? Because it is my mother who made it. But how does it happen that it is good? Everybody loves me. Come, come, you don't believe all you have told me. With irony, of course not. It is a dream. It is all humbug. It is all humbug. And as an attendant whom we have called comes to take him away, he says to him graciously, while showing him his trousers which are falling, "Button me up, my old fellow." This happy man has a level of 9 years, and it may be said in passing, one can see that his delirium has nothing to do with his level. Some of our patients have no delirium, although they have a level very inferior to 9 years. The letters dictated by this Ramont remind us by their emphatic tone, by their basis of self-love, by the slowness of their delivery, of the discourse of our imbecile carousel, which we have already published. See page 80. These lubrications and these witty conversations, however poor in ideas, suppose always a certain intellectual activity. Moreover, Ramont talks with considerable fluency upon all subjects. One may see in this a certain objection to our theory. We might ask ourselves, how could this intellectual activity be reconciled with the symptoms which we hold as characteristic of functional inertia? Inertia and activity, are they not contradictory? Yes, they are contradictory, but not incompatible. Many observations have shown us that these are two symptoms which can be neighbours in the same mind. Exactly what is functional inertia? It is a hindrance, a grain of sand, the lack of oil in the wheels of a machine. The intellectual activity, to continue the metaphor, is a force which is applied to this machine and which should be given out again. One can easily conceive that great force may be applied to a machine, that, nevertheless, the machine is hindered by a resistance produced by the poor condition of its parts. But one of the most curious facts that we have observed in the course of our studies upon the insane is that when there is a diminution of the power of functioning, they are unable to solve the more complicated problems, although they can still do the simpler ones. With the use of our measuring scale, we can easily perceive this. Let us cite examples. A little imbecile shows ill will in regard to us. She is pouty, sullen, scarcely replies, and is always anxious to get away from us. This girl still does the simplest tests, those of 4 or 5 years, for instance, but she will not do those of 7 or 8 years, although she was capable of doing them. Consequently, her ill humour produces an apparent lowering of her level. Another example, we recall a melancholy patient who, at the moment of our examination, was a prey to a violent moral affliction. We were able, however, to distract her from it for a few moments, and she consented to reply to some simple tests, but as we passed to more difficult tests, she had more trouble and finally ended in failure. A week later, when the crisis of her attack was over, we saw her again, and when we measured her intellectual level, we were surprised to find it higher. The hysterical attack of this melancholia patient has then produced the same result as the ill humour of the imbecile, an apparent lowering of the level. The result comes from a dynamic action, an inhibition. Among general paralytics, the action is of a different nature. It is not temporary, but permanent. It is not suspended, but destructive, since they are incurable. But setting aside these differences, the law remains the same, and this law may be expressed in the following manner. When some disturbance occurs in the mental functioning, either under the influence of ill humour or chagrin, or the material processes of decay, this trouble manifests itself by an impossibility of solving the more complicated problems, while the simpler problems still remain attainable. Starting from this point, it is easy to understand what takes place when a dement begins his ravings. The fabrication of his delirium implies that a certain intellectual activity sets the wheels of his machine in motion, but this activity is counteracted by inertia, and the subject remains incapable of solving complicated problems. However, under the influence of this spur, he will produce very simple intellectual results. For example, he will follow elementary association of ideas. He will always discuss the same projects, repeat the same words in the same sentences. His intelligence is, as it were, divided into 2 parts. There is inertia for all that is complicated, and, on the contrary, superactivity for all that is easy. End of section 26. Section 27 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon. Translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. This LibriVox recording is the public domain. Recorded by Harvey. Chapter 3. Difference between the 2 notions of functioning and of development. 1. The mentality of the dement compared with that of the defective. This chapter is a logical and necessary supplement to the preceding. We are attempting to introduce into psychology a new idea, a distinction not previously made or only verbally made between the functioning of the intelligence and the development of the intelligence. The problem would indeed be very difficult to solve if it were put in abstract terms. Fortunately for us, we can materialize it in our own patients. In the pages which follow, it will suffice for us to demonstrate the psychological difference between the development of the imbecile, because, as we see it, the chief lack of the dement is an intellectual functioning, and of the imbecile is an intellectual development. It is evidently necessary to distrust appearances, and particularly to discern the true value of the symptoms. All that we have described as disturbances of functioning appears trivial enough, and even so general, that it seems impossible to imagine anything else as intellectual disturbances through defect. In the first place, have we not all of us experienced these various disturbances? Who is there among us who, distracted or fatigued, has not experienced those states, where one passes over words in writing, where one feels a proper name escaping him at the moment of a pressing need to speak it, or where one fails to grasp the meaning of a sentence which he hears, where one makes errors of addition or loses himself in a problem? This is very common, but there is even a stronger objection. Do we not encounter among the imbeciles themselves these same troubles of evocation which we have analysed among general paralytics? Imbeciles also have difficulty in acting quickly, in counting backward and are embarrassed by a problem. They also make at times incongruous replies and are even guilty of graphage, grafting. There is a certain test of an essentially functional nature, the arrangement of weights, which presents so much difficulty for general paralytics that one would be tempted to recommend it to practitioners as a test to detect slight cases of insanity or its beginnings, which would be very useful indeed in these cases. But when one tries this test on imbeciles, they also fail equally with dements. Therefore, since this is true, we are certainly going to be asked what a clear, palpable, evident difference could be given between the imbecile and the dement, and how could this difference enable us to understand the distinction which we propose to establish between intellectual development and intellectual functioning. A preliminary remark is necessary to the effect that the reason a general paralytic fails in a test is not the same as for an imbecile. The practical result is the same. It is failure, but the cause is different. Thus, when an imbecile fails to name the colours correctly, when he calls red, blue, and yellow green, it is generally because he does not know the names of the colours, or because he knows them insufficiently, and his nimpotesquism is a result of his ignorance. With the dement we shall have the same errors of naming, but the subject knows the names of the colours very well, and his errors are made not because of his ignorance, but in spite of his knowledge. The same is true in naming cars. The errors of the imbecile are those of ignorance. Those of a paralytic dement cannot be explained by ignorance because, by exciting him, by urging him forcibly, we can succeed in making him name them correctly. In the same way, when an imbecile fails in counting correctly a small sum of money, it is either because he does not know the series of figures or because he does not know how to apply them. It is always ignorance under one form or another. Our dement, on the contrary, knows how to count, but in spite of his knowledge, he becomes confused. Is the difference which we attempt to bring out between these two mental states after all very important? Perhaps it will be thought not. It can be summed up in the contrast between knowledge and power, but it may be said this difference exists among all of us. Knowledge is a great circle, and power is a very much smaller circle which is inscribed within the other. In less metaphysical terms, we always know much more than we have power to perform. A child must thoroughly know the rule of the agreement participles in order to apply it easily, and yet many years may pass during which he has been able to recite the rule glibly, while all the time making a host of errors of agreement when writing. We are all children in this respect. In its application we are always inferior to the lesson which we have learned and which we can recite. We reply to this objection that it is true, only there is an important difference of degree which we must take into account. If the distance between knowledge and power is great for all of us, it becomes enormous in general paralytics because they are hardly able to perform the 100th part of what they know. A case in point, previously reported at length, is that of the patient to whom it was necessary to repeat 6 times in succession, using different terms each time, the mechanism of the act of counting backwards, and yet she knew how to count backwards, as the event fully proved. 2. 2 practical characteristics by which to distinguish the mental defects from the dement. From this point of view, 2 practical signs, results, whose use we recommend in the clinic in order to make the distinction between the mentality of a defective and that of a general paralytic. In the first place, that which distinguishes the ignorance of the imbecile from the functional inertia of the dement is that, with the latter, the failures and the errors have a remarkable degree of inconsistence, which indicates disturbances, accidents, while the negative results of the imbecile present, on the contrary, considerable consistency, something which is not a disturbance, but is the expression of the limit of his mind. In fact, we have seen certain demons fail before some difficulty, and 5 minutes later triumph over it brilliantly. It is the same for their disturbances of articulation. Give them a word difficult to pronounce, they fail. Then at a moment when one expects at least, they pronounce it without difficulty. From this come many surprises. We wish to demonstrate that a certain general paralytic always errs in counting money. He is asked to count 20 sous, and this time he does so correctly without a single mistake. This is quite embarrassing for a demonstration. In a general way, one can hardly foresee how such a one is going to conduct himself. Figure 22 is displayed on the page. Madame Solas, general paralytic. The second distinctive sign between the mentality of an imbecile and that of a general paralytic is furnished by the consideration of the intellectual level. It is in fact by relation to their level that one must judge of the importance of the phenomena of deficiency which they present. The errors committed by an imbecile are not surprising, since his intelligence is so limited. On the contrary, the errors of a paralytic are at variance with his level. Thus Albert, an imbecile of 5 years, cannot correctly name the colours. That is not surprising, for it belongs to a child of 5 years. We have seen the paralytic Colon, formerly a house painter, called blue, green, and yellow blue. These are errors which surprise us because Colon has a level of 10 years. The error under these conditions is not justified by the level. It has an unusual character. We could give here numerous examples of failures of general paralytics, which have this striking character of being out of relation to their level, but we prefer to limit ourselves to one particular case and develop it fully. Here is a history of a patient whose intellectual level is still good, and nevertheless what difficulties of functioning are perceived when she is closely examined. Madame Solas is a woman of 45 years, who has a calm, serene, almost indifferent aspect. Her physiognomy is but slightly expressive. Her voice is weak, her gestures slow. Her speech presents the peculiar difficulties of articulation which are characteristic of general paralysis. To the questions asked, she replies with exactitude, with good sense, often even with witticisms. This indicates that the intelligence has held itself well. One would almost have the feeling that she is normal if precise tests did not prove her decay. We will let her talk a little. What is your name? Blanche Goudis. And your first name? Blanche Solas Blanche. She spells her first name. And your age? 40. I shall be 45 the 18th of February. 44 at least. I am stupid. Why? I was born in 66. If she was born in 66, and it is now 1907, she would be 41. Already we have difficulties and errors of evocation. Is it old or young to be 44 years old? What is that, monsieur? Little psychic deafness. The question is repeated. Oh, I don't know. It is enough for me. Would you like to be 75? Oh, no, too old. What for? I couldn't. What couldn't you? I could not be that old. I couldn't endure it. You would rather be dead? Oh, surely. Were you young once? With a smile. Oh, I suppose, like everyone else. Here we have intelligent reflection. How old is one at 20? At 20 years? 20 years. The smile continues. What has been your profession? Embroiderer. How much does one earn at that trade? I earned a living once, and now? Now it is lost, like all the rest. How much money could you make at your trade of embroidery? 3 or 4 francs. By the day of the week? By the day. How much did that make a week? 3 francs a day. That made 18 francs a week. All of this was correct. Were you married? Yes, monsieur. What does your husband do? He is dead. I am a widow. What did he do when living? A hatter. Chapelier. He built chapels? Chapels, then? A hatter, I say. Hats. You are making fun of me. No, I am a butcher, so I understand nothing about hate. Well, it's different. Your husband's name? Pooh. Did you have any children? No, sir, I never had any. Are they dead? Yes, sir, they were dead when born. You have had 2. Ah, I only had 1. What is the year we are in now? I do not know. I hardly know how I live. Think. Ah, I know nothing. I have no memory. She makes no effort to remember. It is very singular that with the succession of reasonable answers which she has just given, she confesses to such a lack of orientation. You have no memory? None whatever. Why do you say that? Because I see it, monsieur. I have noticed it more than once. I have none at all. What is it you forget? Everything. Give an example. For instance, my pocket-book. I would leave it on the table. 10 seconds later, I would have forgotten where it was. And what else did you forget? With irony. Well, my head on my shoulders. You have lost much money in that way? No, because someone took care of it for me. These are characteristic disturbances of the memory, of evocation. They are conscious. The patient perceives them and passes judgment on herself. Your mother, is she younger than you? No. Is she older? She is 60 years old. Can her mother be younger than her daughter? It is comprehensible. She did not understand the question, and doubtless replied upon the reasonable tone which we employed in questioning her. But can her daughter be older? Ah, no. The judgment is good. So do you not know the year? Oh, faith, yes, we are in the year 99. Is it winter or summer? It is summer. What month? June. That is nearly correct. Name the months a year. She names them correctly. That makes how many? Oh, I don't know. Think again. How many months are there in a year? 12. Note this inertia. She knows but does not attempt to reply. Why are you here? To take care of my health. In what way? My nerves. Are you satisfied here? Yes, bonsoir. But there are crazy people here? I do not believe it. There are some, but I am not crazy, not I. So it does not annoy you to be with crazy people? That annoys me because I am very impressionable. She speaks indistinctly. I do not speak well. Still, are you satisfied here? Yes, bonsoir, because I hope that you will cure me. What is your illness? It was St. Vitus's dance, bonsoir. I had it as a child from a fright. So? Always impressionable. At the last thing, I cry without being able to stop. It is the same with laughing. On the whole, she is indifferent to her confinement, and there is a curious contrast between this indifference and this emotivity. In reality, everything is alike to her. Nevertheless, she is easily affected. She weeps or she laughs at nothing. This seems contradictory, but in the main, her tears and smiles are very superficial. This mental state is the rule with general paralytics. She is very modest in appearance. Let us see if she has some vanity. You have nevertheless some special talents? Oh, no, monsieur, I have none. You are not an ordinary woman. Surely not. You were not bad-looking once. In my time, no. You were pretty. I had, like all young girls, la beau de devil, youth. But something of it remains? I don't know. For all that, I could do without it. Judgment very good. We did not succeed in arousing the least feel of self-importance. Here there is a portrait of Madame Sollas. All her replies harmonize and are in good order. The mentality does not seem to be at all in ruins. In precise tests, she shows the keenness of intelligence. We ask her to define some words. Certain of her definitions are charming. What is a fork? Here's what goes with the spoon. What is a mother? That is the best of all. Ah. Justice? Ah, it is great an injustice. It is greater still. A scholar would not disavow such replies. Her manner of welcoming pleasantries indicates a clear mind. Is snow sometimes red? Oh no, it is white. I have never seen it red myself. What was the colour of the white horse of Henry IV? Laugh. Why do you ask now? I do not remember. I never saw it. But what is there absurd in my question? Laughing. Because it was red. This was sufficient to give an idea of the intellectual level of Madame Sollas. She is evidently not an imbecile, nor even a moron. It is in relation to this mental level that we must judge her disturbances of evocation. These disclose a weakness that is truly astonishing. Thus she cannot count backwards. She says, 20, 17, 19, 15, and can go no farther. We try again another day, but with no better results. In the same way, although she knows how to count, she makes continual mistakes in counting money or pins. She counts 9 pins where there are only 8. A small sum of 19 sous, composed of a 50-centime piece, 4 2-sou pieces, and a 1-sou piece, is too difficult for her. The first time she counts 14 sous, and the second 20 sous. Another example. Several additions of 2 numbers of 2 figures each are proposed to her in writing. The pen is put to her hand and she is told to add. She is willing, but note closely how she performs the operation. Then it may be well understood we give the details. In the first addition she must add 59 to 73. The 2 numbers are placed one below the other, the line drawn, and thus the way made clear. The patient places the figure 2 under the first column. She has therefore correctly added 9 and 3, finding 12, placing 2, but she must carry the 1. Now she must add 5 and 7, and add the 1 carried over. This embarrasses her. she prefers not to attempt it and passes to the second edition. There she finds 52 to be added to 79. She adds the first column 2 and 9 and finds 11, writes 1. But there is here also 1 to carry over. A new difficulty, she prefers to leave this also and pass to the next edition. Here a similar difficulty has been arranged, because the numbers were chosen so that there would always be something to carry. She gives this up after adding the first column and passes to the fourth example, which meets the same fate as the other. Thus we find her 4 times in succession, passing the difficulty by. One can therefore attribute to her this rule of conduct. Nothing is impossible to man. That which he cannot do, he leaves. Her reaction times to sound. The last detail which we cite are unusually long. She has apparently understood how she must respond, but she reacts with extreme slowness. We have each time done our best to encourage her to go more quickly. Her reaction times are about 50 100ths of a second, while with the normal they are 12 100ths, and when she tries to hasten the movement, she only gives anticipated reactions. In this respect, she is altogether inferior to a certain imbecile named Albert, of whom we have elsewhere spoken. Albert has more difficulty in understanding the experiment, but when it is understood, his reactions are quicker and better. Thus, as has been clearly shown, the disturbances of functioning which Madame Solas presents do not belong to her level. They are, so to speak, unworthy of her intelligence. This is one of the characteristics which these disturbances present among general paralytics, and thus provide a means of distinguishing the failures and blunders to which imbeciles are liable. 3. Residues. We must attempt to specify to some extent what constitutes the contrast which exists between certain defective replies of general paralytics and that level which is higher or appears to be higher than their replies. The question is very complicated in itself, and it is further obscured by all that we know of the nature of residues. We must remember that the dement differs from the imbecile by having a past of normal intelligence, and consequently we should expect that instruction and the varied information acquired by the dement would leave some traces in his conversation which would not accord with his present intelligence. These evidences of an earlier condition superior to the present are what we call residues. Alienists who question these patients are on the watch for residues which may serve to bring to light the differences which we note between the imbecile and the dement. Perhaps it will be thought that it is to the presence of numerous residues that we owe the contrast which we note among the dements between their level and some of their replies. This opinion contains indeed a part of the truth, but it must not be exaggerated. Or rather, we must take into account the quality of the facts which may survive from an earlier epoch. We distinguish 3 elements. 1. Scholastic knowledge. 2. General knowledge of practical life. 3. The form of verbal replies from the point of view of grammar and of the vocabulary. 1. Scholastic knowledge is certainly most lacking among dements. We have taken the pains to study their reading, writing, and arithmetic, not with any foregone conclusions, which unfortunately is too often done and which signifies nothing, but employing 2 distinct known quantities. We first take their level of intelligence by means of our measuring scale, afterwards with some very precise tests of instruction arranged by our collaborator M. Vanny. We examine these patents to see if they are equal in reading, writing, and arithmetic to normal children of the same level. We expect that these tests would enable us to discover many residues. Our error was great. It is in reading that they acquit themselves the best. Out of 7 patients, 5 read as well as would be expected from their level. 2 are a year behind, 1 is 2 years ahead, a very exceptional fact. This is Beauchamp, the poor teacher who has fallen to the level of 5 years. In spite of her profound decay, she can still read as one reads at 7 years. But note carefully that what is best retained among these subjects is reading as an exercise of articulation, but without the understanding of what they read. Thus we encounter several of these dements who read the selection correctly and fluently enough, but who can tell almost nothing of what they read. They are very inferior to normal children who read less fluently and less correctly than they, but who can retain many facts after the reading is over. A table is displayed on the page, reference table of pedagogical examination. Writing from dictation, judged by the orthography, is always faulty. The number of errors of spelling and grammar is not at all that of children of the same level. There is a retardation of at least a year, and much indulgence is required to record only the difference. It is only by disregarding the numerous lapses which they commit in writing. The retardation is still more accentuated in arithmetic. We have studied this by means of the extremely simple problems of the table of M. Vanny. The problem of the apples is a limit very rarely attained. Out of 5 patients studied with the greatest care, we observed in 1 a retardation of 1 year, in 2 a retardation of 2 years, and in 2 a retardation of 3 years. Thus, Colin, who has the level of 10 years, is absorbed for a minute and a half in solving the problem. If I have 17 apples and I eat 8 of them, how many are left? And he finds 8 apples. The conclusion to be drawn from all this is that, if we employ the method which we have just indicated, and which consists in first fixing the intellectual level by a group of tests, and then comparing the scholastic knowledge of the dement with that which normally belongs to his intellectual level, we find a marked retardation, especially for scholastic problems. This is therefore the exact opposite of residues. Perhaps someone will object to our manner of proceeding, and while admitting that it is superior to the empirical method of certain alienists, who, struck by the cleverness of a reply, say from intuition, there is a residue, will perhaps object that our procedure is conventional and consequently artificial. Everything depends, he will say to us, upon the way in which you fix the level. If, for example, you fix it by means of the remnants of instruction that are observed among the patients, all the other tests will be residues. Indeed, if a dement is 2 years retarded in arithmetic, and if you fix this level by that test alone, the result will be that he is advanced for a host of other tests. That is true, only we believe that such a convention would be open to criticism. It seems to us decidedly preferable to fix the level of a group of tests by the greatest possible number of tests, and by those as varied as possible. This is what we have done, and in so far as we are right in so doing, we maintain that the instruction in reading, writing, or arithmetic would never constitute a residue. And now one last remark. If reading is better preserved than writing from dictation, and is again better preserved than arithmetic, it is because it contains a greater part of automatic activity. We have noted this singular fact that a dement may read as easily and as fluently as a child of the same level, but he does not understand nor explain his reading nearly so well. It is a difference between an automatic memory and an expression of intelligence. These patients are weak in arithmetic because we demand of them the solution of problems. That is to say, an exercise of the judgment and not of the automatic memory. By taking another direction and demanding more of their automatic life, we should have different results. The certain dements still know their multiplication tables very well, but when memory fails and they try to conceal this lack, the errors they make are fantastic. Sam's 7-year level replies thus to our questions. Question 2 and 2, answer 4. 3 and 3, answer 6. 5 and 4, answer 9. 9 and 17, answer 14. 12 and 12, answer 24. 12 and 13, answer 16. 13 and 27, answer 15. The reply 12 and 12 makes 24 is automatism, while the reply 12 and 13 makes 16 is an expression of intelligence in which the subject remembers nothing. This is evidence of what she does when automatism fails her. Her log, level of 9 years, shows the same contrast in a still more obvious manner. A table is displayed on the page comparing questions to answers and times. The example is clear. Having lost the memory of 8 multiplied by 8 equals 64, this patient cannot multiply 8 times 8, and when he tries to do so to repair his failure of memory, he commits enormous errors. Here is a curious contrast between automatism and expression of the intelligence. We terminate, therefore, this part of our work with the conclusion that the automatism, when it is retained, is always above their intelligence. 2. The knowledge of practical life has given rise to the same illusion. To our surprise, we confess, we have not found residues here, or indeed but rarely, and the proof of this is that the dement, compared to an imbecile or to a moron of the same level, has no greater general knowledge. We cite the example of a woman vegan who has a level of 9 years, and in whom one might expect the conservation of a mass of ideas. She has become very ignorant and does not know how to reply even when asked very easy questions of practical life. Where were you born? At Strasbourg. What is your fatherland? I am French. What is the capital of France? She limits herself to sticking out her tongue. She does not even know the capital of France. Extraordinary ignorance. What is the capital of France? I do not know. What is it you do not know? Because we are wondering if she understood the question. The capital of France. And the government of France, what is it? You ask me too much. Is it a kingdom, a republic, an empire? You ask me too much. Is there a king in France? No. An emperor? Yes. What is his name? I do not know. What river flows through Paris? The Seine. There's a place where it is low. Did you know Carnot? I have seen him in a book. How did he die? I have seen his tomb in a book. Yes, how did he die? I do not know. And Victor Hugo was? Victor Hugo is also dead. And who was he? Victor Hugo was... I forget. Did you know Pasteur? A pastor, yes. What did you know of Pasteur? A pastor is a man who is intelligent. Have you ever heard of Louis XIV? I knew Louis XIV, but... Charlemagne. Yes? Who was Charlemagne? An interesting man. I ought to know much about him. I have read that in books. But where are her school memories? Where are the snows of last year? What is the capital of Italy? That I don't know. What is the Pope? The Pope is the king of all the world. She lived 5 years at Hades. Her husband worked at the Seine. We ask her, what is the sea called at Toulon? There is a sea at Toulon more or less high. Sometimes it overflows and destroys the houses. It goes all the way to Hades. But what is it called? The sea that bathes Toulon. The Sea of Toulon. Let us question her further. How much does it cost to send a letter from Paris to Marseille? Oh, I never sent a letter from Paris to Marseille. And from Paris to Toulon, how much does that cost? A letter from Paris to Toulon does not cost much, no more than 5 sous. How many minutes in an hour? 12. How many days in the year? There are 30 days in a month. But in a year? I would have to count that. She recites the months. That makes 10 and 3, 13 months, isn't it? But how many days? I have to count that. I'd have to count by 30. We deem it unnecessary to make her perform this calculation. She can no longer recite to the end, Our Father who art in heaven. Nevertheless, she is absolutely ignorant. She knows what a dozen eggs cost, a pound of lard, a cutlet, and also where wine and milk come from. She describes fairly well how one fries an egg. When one realizes that for 30 years she had lived the social life of the world, one can judge of the actual poverty of her ideas. She has no more memories than a moron, for instance, Griffin, whose history we have given in a previous article upon the intelligence of imbeciles, page 120. In order to be able to judge the value of the practical knowledge of demons, we must compare them with imbeciles or morons, and not with children of the same level, because imbeciles, like demons, have had a long past life, and in consequence have had an experience which is lacking in children. 3. The form of verbal replies. If residues of memories do not exist, one must not conclude, therefore, that all residues are absent in the psychic life of demons. One could not draw such a conclusion because it would be directly contrary to clinical experience. Every experienced clinician, when in the presence of a demon, has had the impression that his mentality is not the same as that of a moron, that it is richer, nobler, more impregnated with traces of a previous normal life. This impression cannot be ignored, since it rests upon long experience. It must contain some truth. After much reflection, we have finally reached the following conclusion. Residues certainly exist among demons, and they contribute to the production of the contrast which we have so strongly insisted upon, between their lapses and their level, but we must not search for them where they do not exist. They never result from the expression of the intelligence consisting, for instance, in making a clever remark, or expressing a judicious judgment, or still less, in solving a problem. Nor do they consist in conscious memories whose application would demand some intelligence. They consist in the shade of expression and gesture, the form of language, the turn of a phrase, the choice of words which are in harmony with a rather high intelligence which today is lost. As a result of this, we, the observers, meet with a host of slight perceptions, more or less conscious, often badly confused, which reveal the contrast between what the dement actually is and what he once was. We could cite certain sentences of a dement, the nobility of which, as Théodore, of a normal life, and of which an imbecile would be incapable. It is not then by the content of their replies that the dements prove that they have residues. It is rather by the form, so far at least as one is able to separate the word from the thought, because the whole is bound together. And in general, a common thought is not clothed in noble words. Thus Beauchamp, who at the level of 5 years, when asked a trade of her husband, cannot surpass the childish and imbecile formula, "he works." But a few seconds later she gives to another question this remarkable reply: "I do not know what it is that you wish me to say." It is clear that no child of 5 years, unless it were very precocious, would ever construct sentences in so complicated a manner. Another dement, generally very taciturn, the one who was taken by an expert alienist for an imbecile, replied to the question, "Are you beautiful or ugly? You see very well how I am." And another time she said to us, speaking of her past, "I was very beautiful, I assure you." The form of language is superior to a level which is only that of 4 years. Sams, a paralytic of the level of 7 years, also makes reflections whose verbalism is quite superior. "You have not received any treatment?" "Oh no, only I take wine, good wine that the doctor has ordered for me. So when I leave here, I shall go and buy a quart, because it is good for me. It comes a little dear, but no matter, when one needs care." We have put in italics whatever in her reply has seemed to us somewhat superior. The onlys and that's, the whens. These words are, as it were, the atrocities of language. Vigny, whose level is 9 years, tries to arrange 5 boxes in the order of their weight, and during the tasks makes reflections that are worthy of note. They seem to be all of the same weight. Ah, no, this one. They must be nearly equal. I do not believe that I am much mistaken. It is quite difficult inasmuch as the difference is slight, especially weighing them thus in the hand. Again we put in italics what seems to us of a style superior to her level. Philomene, of the 9-year level, abounds in sentences which are striking because of their elegance. Speaking of a past existence, she says, "It is quite a romance, my life." Describing a picture which represents an old man seated on a bench, she says, "Oh, that white beard! How beautiful it is! How respectable!" After reading for us the story of a fire started through carelessness, she said, "I cannot understand why anyone should not take more precautions than that." Another time, after having described with much boasting the talent she had for dressing the hair and for combing out the tangles, she said, "And gentle above everything else, with so much care and gentleness. Separate the hairs almost one by one with infinite care, without annoying the person," etc. Parrot, another woman of the level of 9 years, of whom we ask what is charity, replies, "What is it that you wish me to say? It seems to me that any one who exercises charity does well, because there are so many unfortunates. You should exercise it too, and look after some poor people." When we have her count some sous on the edge of the table, she makes this superior reflection: "This is really child's play." After these examples we can do no more than give our feeling, because we have not made the necessary studies of the evolution of language which would permit us to affirm the age to which each grammatical form corresponds. We shall supply this lack when we are able. For the moment we must be content with saying that in the thoughts, the locations, the choice of words, and the syntax of paralytic dements, we find very many residues, which consist especially in automatic memories. They are skeletons from which the conscious life has withdrawn. With this point, which presents some practical interest, we conclude by saying that the inertia of functioning which we observe in general paralytics is especially recognized by the contrast which exists between their failures and their intellectual level in so far as one can accurately measure it. And furthermore, their intellectual level appears to be higher than it really is because of the presence of residues, which consist in the verbal form of their replies, rather than in their content. 4. Insufficiency of development opposed to insufficiency of functioning. It remains for us now to go a little farther, and having explained what a disturbance of functioning is, to contrast it with a lack of development. For this we shall speak mainly of imbeciles. Let us take a watch. In the mechanism of a watch, there are two things to consider. First, its degree of complexity. A certain watch indicates only the hour, another indicates the hours and minutes, another adds to this the seconds. Second, we must consider the functioning of the watch, that is to say, the regularity of its movement, its rapidity, the length of time it can go without being wound up, etc. It is this distinction which is so clear for a watch or any piece of mechanism that we are attempting to apply to an intelligence, because it seems to us to be a very convenient illustration of which to express the essential difference which exists between an imbecile and a general paralytic, and the numerous points in which the two resemble each other. The imbecile has an intelligence but slightly developed. It is, as it were, a rudimentary watch which indicates only the hours, but so far as it goes, this intelligence functions well. Every time this intelligence fails before a problem, it is through lack of development. On the contrary, with the general paralytics, it is always the functioning that is at fault. This is to say, the intellectual work. Theoretically, this dement must be considered as an intelligent man who can no longer use his intelligence and whose intelligence betrays him in every moment. From this point of view, the distinction between the imbecile and the dement is therefore very clear. But exactly what is the development of the intelligence? In what does it consist? Certainly in many things he would be very daring who tried to define such a complexity with a single word. But we can state what seems to be the most important trait in all mental development, and what seems on the contrary the accessory trait. In addition, we may note the tendency to organization, which is undeniably weaker in the child than in the adult. Witness the inconsistency of the desires, the caprices of ideas, the lack of continuity which we find in a young child. Follow in the street a little schoolboy going to school and compare the path he follows with that of an adult. The adult goes more or less directly to his destination, while the child takes a zigzag course which shows the insufficiency of his direction and control. Here, then, in our opinion, is one of the traits of mental development. It produces a better and stronger organization, and consequently it is to be expected that young subjects who are not yet completely developed should show signs of a weakness of organization. In this way they must, of necessity, slightly resemble general paralytics, in whom the insufficiency of direction and control also manifests itself, but as a sign of disorganization and not as the beginning of organization. There is not, however, with the child any lack of avocation, but rather lack of coordination, through the pollination of ideas and of heteroclitic sentiments. But that which especially and essentially characterizes our mental development is the process of differentiation. If one refers to our chapter upon the scheme of thought, which we have included in a most extensive study of the mental development of imbeciles, we find there the law formulated and described according to which a thought develops. It is by the progressive passing from the simple to the complex, from the indefinite to the definite, from the accessory to the essential, a progress thanks to which the thought adjusts itself better and better to its end. The development of intelligence manifests itself, therefore, in the quality of the state of consciousness. Of two states of consciousness, the one is of superior quality, which is less simple, less commonplace, less vague, less intermediate, more definite, more rich, more special, or rather, to take a broader view, the superior state is that which adapts itself the best, most completely to its environment, and for the adaptation to be as perfect as possible, the thought must reflect at the same time that which is special and essential in the development in which one acts. A curious experiment that we have often tried with children of all ages, adults of every social occasion, imbeciles and morons of every level, and general paralytics of every degree of disorganization, shows admirably in what this development consists. We refer to the comments upon pictures. We place before an imbecile and a general paralytic a picture representing two old people in want, stranded upon a bench. One of them is an old man with a white beard and eyes closed. The other woman is leaning against him. An imbecile is satisfied with the response, "It is a man." A general paralytic, impressed no doubt by the head and beard of the man, makes this reflection. One would say Victor Hugo. Who would not perceive the abyss between these two responses? The thought of the imbecile is almost indeterminate, would apply quite as well, not to say quite as poorly, to an immense number of different pictures. It would be well to recall here that we made a collection of some 15 reproductions of paintings which we showed to our imbeciles, and for these pictures they have almost always made the same reply. It is a man, those are women. That is again a man, and then that is a woman, etc. It would be impossible for one to reproduce the picture from such commonplace, indeterminate comments. On the contrary, the reflection which compares the old man with the white beard to Victor Hugo is much more complex, much more special. It would apply only to a very small number of pictures. There is here the character of a speciality which we consider one of the qualities of intellectual development. A second character is that of representing what is essential in the reality. Here again the comments upon pictures furnish us with many examples. Many children looking at the pictures are struck by some insignificant detail. They designate first, for example, the branch of a tree instead of the active persons, and thus subordinate the principal to the accessory, the whole to the part. In the same way, dull intelligences take only the immediate appearance of the reality, and neglect what they do not see, but what is nevertheless of infinitely greater importance. Much might be said upon this subject. Combine these two qualities of the states of consciousness, and we see that they assure an adjustment of each state of consciousness to its own end, that they thus make the theory of adaptation enter into an exact conception of intelligence, and that we arrive at a very clear and very satisfactory idea of intellectual development. In opposing thus the quality of the states of consciousness with their evocability, we make a distinction between the development of the intelligence and its functioning, at the same time between the mentality of the imbecile and that of the paralytic. The mentality of the imbecile is composed of simple states of consciousness which are evoked with normal facility. The mentality of the paralytic is composed of states which are more complex, but which have become difficult of evocation. 5. For the clinic. We have thus examined our problem, placing ourselves first at the theoretical point of view of the psychologist, then at the practical point of view of the physician. It is at this latter point of view that we again place ourselves to ask if the description we have made of the slight psychological signs of dementia and the theories which we have drawn from them have contributed to the diagnosis of dementia, and how far. It would seem that we have reached a conclusion which, setting aside the difference of language, is equivalent to saying that the paralytic dement presents a weakening of the whole intelligence. But this is also the conclusion, or to put it better, the quintessence of the classical theory. First, let us say in what way we are in perfect accord with this theory, then we shall state how we believe we surpass it. In accordance with the classical theory, we admit that the weakening of these patients is global in character. But if we admit it, it is because we have demonstrated it by very different means. For clinicians, the disturbance is global because it is manifested in all the functions, memory, attention, judgment, etc., by means of observations in detail, but without connection one with the other. And because one makes, in a way, an addition of all these disconnected observations, and one sees that in the dement none of the faculties is spared, none functions normally. For us the disturbance is global because we see that it results from a certain mode of functioning, always the same, which is found in the whole intellectual activity. For us it is an affair of psychological analysis, and not an accumulation and a generalization of particular observations. It is, in a word, because dements have a disturbance in evocation, and because evocation is the basis of all intellectual work, and that these patients seem to be affected by a general weakening. It results from this that our interpretation is much more flexible than the classic. It permits the conception of other forms of global dementia, but they will not be so far in the same manner as paralytic dementia. Dementias, for example, where the different intellectual functioning are all affected by unequally in degree or differentially in quality. It can thus be seen that we give to this expression of global a new sense. The same remarks can be made in regard to the term weakening. One believes that he understands this word, and it seems precise and sufficient, until he takes the pains to analyze it. The analysis which results from the classical theory is extremely incomplete. By intellectual weakening of general paralytics, we understand simply a group of errors of memory, of judgment, etc. But there are indeed errors of many sorts. Those of general paralytics are not those of epileptics, not those of senile dements. It is true that we say that the errors of general paralytics indicate a demential level. But is this true? The errors of general paralytics seem rather to contrast than in accord with their level of intelligence. When the patient Philippon, who has a level of 9 years, cannot tell the date, and we suggest to her, "Is perhaps at 50th?" and she replies, "Perhaps it is," the error has not its raison d'etre in the demential level of her disease. Philippon is not so low grade since she still retains a level of 9 years. We think the error can be explained by defect of functioning and the absence of evocation. The number 50 has not evoked the precise and appropriate idea, and consequently has not been judged. And it is this defect of functioning which characterizes the errors of the patients. The novelty of our point of view in the use of the word weakening can be very easily seen if one recalls the discussions that daily occur in cases where the diagnosis of general paralytics is doubtful. It seems for these authors that the intelligence is a quantity and the weakening is only a diminution of this quantity. Thus, one often hears this objection to a diagnosis: "But this patient has memory. See all the information he can give. Now listen to the reflection which he makes. It proves that he is not lacking in judgment." It would seem that these objections were correct. When a patient furnishes exact information as to his trade, his income, his first entrance into the asylum, or recalls some event that you yourself have forgotten and which you are obliged to verify, one may recognize in him a general paralytic, but it is not by virtue of the conception which these authors have formed upon the subject of the weakening of the intelligence, because the conservation of the attention, of judgment, of memory, is incompatible with this conception. On the contrary, our theory puts us completely at our ease with these embarrassing facts. Dementia is not characterized by a lowering of level, and the lowering of the level is not sufficient to constitute dementia. One does not speak of dementia in melancholia, although the intellectual functions are very much diminished. The intelligence of general paralytic is lowered, disturbed by accidents which manifest themselves in its functioning, accidents which constitute veritable defects. There does not exist in the beginning, for instance, deterioration of judgment, but faults of judgment, repeated accidents, blunders. These inertia of functioning is in the beginning only accidental, because it contrasts with the whole of the personality. It occurs at intervals very irregularly, and of course it manifests itself particularly in difficult and complicated cases which demand of it care, attention to detail. For the diagnosis to be established, it suffices that one of these characteristic defects manifests itself clearly. By the repetition, the multiplication of these defects, we have a lowering of the level, because these defects interfere with and completely diminish the output of the individual. Compared to each other, the imbecile and the dement are like two poor walkers who have different reasons for not going a long distance. The imbecile because he has very short legs, the dement because he makes false steps and is constantly falling down. That which dominates the whole question is the mechanism of the errors produced by the dements. We replace the old conception, then, by a conception that is more precise. The old conception, according to which the demential states depend upon a quantitative diminution of the intelligence or upon an injury to all the faculties, was a constant source of confusion. One had indeed the impression that there was something besides this, but whenever the diagnosis of dementia was doubtful, or when one attempted to determine exactly the constituent elements, the grounds that he believed solid gave way under his feet. To the vague and inexact affirmation of a global diminution of the whole intelligence must be added, and even substituted for it, the conception of individual errors of functioning, of defects of every sort, which by their multiplication lower the intellectual level and which present the two following characteristics: irregularity and extensiveness relative to the level of the subject. End of section 27. Section 28 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon, translated by Elizabeth Kite. This recording is in the public domain, recorded by Leon Harvey for LibriVox.org. Chapter 4. Distinction between Ideational Intelligence and Instinctive Intelligence. 1. Portraits of two senile demons. Serious objection could be made to the theory of paralytic dementia which we have just set forth, or to put it better, we shall make some observations which at first sight seem to contradict the preceding theory, but which on the contrary, when rightly interpreted, will support it and will permit its meaning to be enlarged. We allude to a whole category of patients, the senile dements, who present extremely accentuated disturbances of memory and consequently of the faculty of evocation, and who nevertheless have not at all the same mentality nor the same attitude as general paralytics. Instead of making a clinical table of senile dementia, let us observe a patient, make her talk, and submit her to different tests which show all the consequence of the amnesia with which she is affected. We present to our readers an old woman who seems to be 65 or 66 years old. She is small, thin, with slightly anemic skin and delicate features. She is quite lively. Her expression is serious and attentive. She has even an intelligent glance which meets ours directly. This lady is not without good manners. She says good morning on entering, seats herself in a chair, and awaits our questions in a polite manner. She at once gives the impression of a reasonable person, and her conversation from the start confirms this impression. She shows neither familiarity nor lack of tact. The social sense is well preserved in her. Her air of dignity and her circumspection would pass very well in a waiting woman of a public building. Already this attitude permits us to understand with whom we have to deal. She is not an imbecile nor a paralytic. But this is perhaps only a deceptive appearance. Perhaps also the correctness of her attitude is only a residue of her former state. The well-preserved facade of an edifice in ruins, such as one might expect to find in dementia patients. We must not therefore stop at these exterior signs. Let us make our patient talk. Her conversation, when followed, for some time astonishes us. We commence according to our custom by giving general questions. We ask her age, her profession, her family, her past life. It is impossible to obtain a single precise reply or any trustworthy information. Facts that are of prime importance, she declares she does not remember. For others, her explanations are not at all clear. They are even contradictory. Let us see. Figure 23 is displayed on the page. Madame Macollard, senile dement, presents herself with an air of great dignity. What is your name? I am called Madame Macollard. What is your age? Oh, monsieur, I am not young. Oh, no. But what is your age? 72 or 75 years. Are you from Paris? Ah, no. I am from Clermont. What is your profession? Pointing to Dr. Simon, who is waiting. Well, my profession, to do what the gentleman there writes. Impossible to know what she means to say. You were in business? Yes, in business. The hardware business. What did you do in business? We made the circuit. We did it. It was very real. Confused explanations, numerous details, and no one could hear her or understand. You have had many children? I was an only child. You have not understood. I asked you how many children you have had. It would be hard for me to tell. Why so? Because I do not know exactly. Let us see. Explain yourself. Have you had more than one? Oh, I should say. I've had more than 4 since I came here. Unintelligible. Have you had 10? You would not wish it. Less than 10, then. Oh, I think so. More than 5? Oh, surely 5, because one must come and go. I will not tell you that I had less than 5. One can already see from these few words how her memory has gone. There are singular omissions and obscurities in her replies. Note now some contradictions. Your mother is still living? Oh, yes, monsieur. How old is she? She is younger than I. She is not your real mother, then? Yes, my real mother. You say she is younger than you? Once she was younger than I. But now she is older? Since monsieur, pointing to Dr. Simon, is younger than I, well, it is the same thing. Unintelligible. You have told your age? Oh, yes, monsieur. Tell me again, what is your age? Perhaps 60, 65. How much, I do not know. She had 72 or 75 a moment before. And your mother, what is her age? Mamma is older than I. Very often she stays in the country. How old is she? I do not know. If it was read, pointing to Dr. Simon who writes, if that page that is been written on were read. But you said your mother was younger than you? Oh, she is not younger than I. She is about like me, my age. It can be seen how contradictory are the words of this woman, since in an interval of 5 minutes she affirms that she is older than her mother, then that she is younger, and finally that they are of the same age. But in reality, it's because she has had no pronounced definite convictions about the words she uses. She contradicts herself because she forgets the sense of the phrase which she has started, and also the end which she has in her view while speaking. Obviously, none of these contradictions would be encountered in a conversation with imbeciles. The memory of Madame Maquillard presents, in fact, a very accentuated weakening. That which is conserved in her is the use of language, and that which constitutes knowledge, not memories. For instance, reading. She reads quite fluently. Writing, the knowledge of money, the names of colours, etc. But for whatever concerns recent acquisitions, she is deeply stricken. It may be said that she has knowledge, but not memory. Thus she cannot find her bearings from any point of view. She knows neither the hour, the day, the month, the season, nor even the year. What day is today? I do not even know anything. Is it afternoon or morning? Indeed, I do not know. Try to tell which it is, afternoon or morning. It is still morning. And what morning? In reality, it is 5 o'clock in the evening. You have asked me too much. What did you eat this morning? It would be very hard for me to tell you. What month is this? I know nothing about it. Oh, yes, tell me what month it is. It is the same as you? Yes. It is the same, we are equal. Happy way for her to escape. This is December. In reality it is May. It is warm, the fruit trees are in bloom. That surprises me. December and January. We are not in the month of January. It is possible. What year is this? Faith, I know nothing. What year did you say it was? 1809. 1809, that is nothing. And do you know who just died? Louis XIV. I have heard of him. We shall not attempt to characterize this forgetfulness as lack of attention. When the memory is affected to this degree, it is evident that the attention must be also affected. It forms a complicated mass of disturbances. What seems to us certain is that the great loss comes in the memory. Not to know the year in which one is living cannot come from a falling off of the power of attention. Not to know if it is morning or afternoon cannot come from a lack of attention. However weak the attention, the meals are noted. These lapses come from loss of memory. Let us proceed to a methodical study of her memory by way of experiment. She can repeat 4 figures. She attains occasionally this maximum of 4. Out of 13 pictures shown her, she does not remember a single one. All that she can do is repeat a sentence of 8 syllables. We give her 3 simple commissions. She understands them very well, but the moment she rises to perform them, she is much embarrassed. The 3 commissioners are as follows: to carry a music box to another table, to take a flower from a bouquet and bring it to us, to move a chair. The dement rises, saying, "Well, I must take the bouquet." She goes to the table, looks at the bouquet. "I am to take only 1 flower." She is deeply embarrassed, turns to us, looks at us, seeking to implore our assistance. But we remain as immovable as sphinxes. She decides to pick a flower. Her embarrassment continues. "Perhaps I must not bring it." She lays it on a chair and comes back to her seat without any concern as to the commission she has forgotten. Such a loss of memory renders her completely useless. Nothing shows us more clearly the fugitive character of her memory than the experiment with cards. We present to her 2 cards and ask her to name them. Then we conceal the 2 cards, and 15 seconds later, which is a very short period, we ask her to name 2 cards. She has forgotten them. Since we did not succeed with simple cards, we show her some face cards, the King of Diamonds and the Queen of Clubs. 30 seconds are used in showing and making her name the 2 cards. She is very attentive. Then we turn them over on the table and ask her to name them after allowing exactly 15 seconds to pass. Well, what were they? But I did not see. They were red on the back. I did not want to raise the other. Yes, but what did I show you? You showed me. I'm not sure that one wasn't the 6. And the other? Turn it over. You only look at it yourself. We begin to show her the same cards, and again we allow 15 seconds to pass. Well now, this time you are going to name them. king of clubs, and the queen, perhaps of clubs also, or of spades. I only glanced at them. It is her habit always to complain. It can be seen with what difficulty we succeeded in giving her a trace of memory which probably did not endure more than 2 seconds. This is, however, one of the easiest experiments with memory that could be made. That is the reason we use it in senile dementia. In paralytic dementia, we employ a more difficult test, that of the 3 figures, Ernest, Louis, Antoine, but it would be out of the question here, for it would be too difficult for our patient to retain. Let us conclude with an incident. While Madame Mocolard is with us, we send for Denise, an imbecile whose presence cannot escape notice, for she laughs aloud incessantly. Denise remains a full quarter of an hour with us. Madame Mocolard often speaks to her to admonish her, telling her to be quiet, etc. The scene is not devoid of humour. Madame Mocolard has received from us a paper with a request to read us something. She consents, but she has the habit of not being able to decide. She always finds that something is wrong. She turns the paper in every direction. Denise near her laughs loudly. The dement is offended at her laughter, and addresses a reprimand full of feeling to Denise. Mademoiselle, do not laugh. You must be more respected. If certain words are inexact, the tone is there. The imbecile, impressed, quiets herself. The dement goes back to her paper. She complains that she cannot see. With glasses, she says, I could see all right. Seeing that we wear glasses, she says to us, but you have them, then you read, and she hands us the paper. We refuse it. This excites a new burst of laughter from the imbecile, and the dement reprimands her again. My dear, you must not laugh like a child of 3. The scene lasts quite a while, after which the 2 women are taken into the garden to be photographed. This took a long time because we took 3 photographs of one and 2 of the other, and the poses had to be arranged. All then returned to the office, and after a little while Denise was allowed to go. A half hour after the imbecile had left us, we questioned Madame Mocolard about the affair. Did anyone come in here with us? Not that I know of, anyway. We 3 have not been alone all the time. Think. Besides, we were not in the room all the time. In substance, she says that once we went out together. Are you sure that we opened that door? I think so. It was by that door that we had gone into the garden. So no one came in since we have been here? But we have not been here long. In reality, we have been here at least 2 hours. You do not remember to have seen a patient enter here? Ah, a patient who could not stand up. Madame, a patient did not come here. Yes, I do not know. I say yes, I do not know. A patient came in here. Here? You have scarcely had any patients this year. Unintelligible. It was a patient who laughed all the time. That stout woman who came here, she did nothing but laugh. You remember her then? Yes, bonsoir. It was easy to remember her. She sat here on this chair, and then she laughed with her fat face. Correct, the imbecile has a fat face. Thus it can be seen with what difficulty we awaken in her this very striking and very recent memory. It is certain that so great a psychological disturbance must produce many repercussions in the mental stage of the patient. The principal repercussion that became visible during our examinations was, besides the loss of memory, the inappropriateness of language. This dement had great trouble in naming familiar objects shown to her. A gas jet was called a lamp. A wash basin was called porcelain, or a thing to wash in. A water pitcher received this picturesque appellation. It is one that waits for water to be put in. The expression of ideas suffers from this poverty of words, and the patient, as one can see from the bits of dialogue which we have given, often uses unintelligible phraseology or affirms facts which a few minutes before she had denied. This comes from incoherence of language much more than from incoherence of ideas. But let us examine the effect which the amnesia has had upon the judgment of the dement. Does she commit gross blunders? Does she accept without any critical sense the enormities that one affirms before her? Has she lost the sense of the ridiculous? Is she suggestible to a supreme degree? Already it has been possible to note a certain ironic turn in her sentence. Whatever the value of this irony, is evident of a quality that would be impossible in an imbecile. Madame Mocolard is not devoid of wit. Once we asked her to make some mental additions. She could not perform them, but neither did she satisfy herself, as would an imbecile, by replying at random. How much does 9 and 8 make? Very well, 9. How much does 9 and 8 make? Answer first, I will tell you afterwards. Very well, that will be time enough. Notice also that she never replies haphazard, as would an imbecile. When she does not know, she does not reply at all, and declares that she does not know, which is very sensible on her part. On the whole, her memory is extremely weakened, but her judgment is far from being equally so. It is even quite good. Let us introduce another semi dement, Madame Langlaise. She has the brusque, surly, but good manner of a countrywoman. She has lost her memory even more than Madame Magillard, but her judgments remain equally good. She has less dignity than Madame Magillard, and more good nature, more gaiety, especially at the beginning of the sitting. As time goes on, she changes, as will be seen. What is your name? My name is... I have forgotten it already. I have forgotten it. I was born at Soucy, there. You do not remember your name? Ah, to be sure, the name of course. I know well, only at times one does not pay attention. I was born at Soucy. You do not know your name? Yes, bonsoir. What is your name? Augustine. And your family name? My family? Oh, that's at Soucy. But your family name? I have forgotten. We have never encountered a more complete case of amnesia. What is your age? Ah, monsieur, I'm old. I cannot always remember. Is it morning or evening? I cannot tell you. I do not know if it is morning or evening. I do not know. I cannot tell you. Notice the tone, the gay manner. What is a fork? Bonsoir. What is a fork? What is a fork? Well, it is. No, I cannot say what it is. A fork is a fork, so to eat with. What is a table? A table? Well, a table it is to be useful for. Well, I cannot tell you any better. A chair? Well, a chair it is useful for. Well, to sit down. A horse? Ah, well, faith, a horse, to work, and then I don't know how to do any more. And a mamma? She laughs. Ah, that does all sorts of things. What? What's that? Yes, it is a marmot, a fichu. It is all sorts of things. And then one puts. Where is your nose? First she laughs because she seems surprised and struck with the unusual character of the question. This proves in itself that the judgment is good. Well, here it is, my nose. Here, bonsoir, it is here. It is large, but it is here all the same. As we laugh at her remark, she adds, Faith, you make me say silly things. Now you are going to repeat some figures I give you. Yes, sir. 2. 2 what? 2. 2. 4, 9. Silence. 4, 9. 4, 9. 6, 1, 8. How is that? I forget. Ah, when one is old. 3, 0, 7. Oh, well, I cannot tell you that like that. You know. 2. 2. Wait. Well, I do not know. 3, 0, 8. Oh, well, there is too much. There was 3 and then, must I say that? I have no more memory, nothing of anything. My, but it is provoking. She is right, her memory has become very weak, but she criticizes herself, she accuses her age. What is this house here? Yes, bonsoir. What is this house here? Well, what do you want? I have the name, but I have forgotten. It is provoking, the least thing. Is it a castle? Yes, it is a castle, but it is not ours. Here, is it a prison? Ah, no, it is not a prison. A hospital? Yes, a little farther, they call that. She stops, not finding the word. What do you wish, since I tell you I do not know anything about anything? There's little confusion in her words because she has verbal amnesia, and cannot find the words easily. What is this? Showing a key. A key. And that? Crayon, a pencil. After having looked closely, a corroy. No, I see all right what it is. A crochon. No, I tell you I am stupid as anything. What is it? I see a pencil. Ah, what do you want? I cannot see well. And this? A sou. Oh, that? Well, think. That is a 2-sou piece. She has the same trouble with the colours. She names correctly yellow, blue, and green, and red embarrasses her. That it is a thing. How now? I see, I know, I cannot say it. It is violet, not violet. I cannot say it. Oh, how tiresome. It is garnet. How many children have you had? Yes. How many children have you had? I have had 4. No more? Really, I do not know if there are others. Faith, when they're all gone, I don't know. What are their names? My boy, he is the oldest. He is good in business, but the others, they do not know. Sighing. Ah, mon Dieu, I am half dead. It is unfortunate when one cannot see. She constantly complains of her eyes. A moment later, admitting that she gets confused when she is told to count 13 sous, she makes this picturesque reflection. My grandmother used to say to me, when you are old, you will see, and now here I am. We pass on to other tests which we make in order to get her level. Because of her amnesia, we can accomplish nothing, so I have to say that she reaches only the level of intelligence of 4 years. At the moment of parting, we thought of a little by-play, which shows very well that this old woman has good sense and can defend herself from our suggestions. The attendant came to bring a basket of apples into the office. The apples were red and had an appetizing appearance. We said to Madame Langlaise, "Here are apples, take one." "No, I don't want to." "Oh, yes, take one." "No, they're not mine." So people can say that I took the apples, with energy. When I eat apples, it is because I buy them. But he, pointing to the other, he stole the apples. "Ah, that's not my fare. Take one." "There is no danger. I do not want to take other people's. If anyone gives them to me, I will take them, but I do not wish to take them. There." This was the first skirmish, and we already see that she can defend herself against temptation. But here is something better. The scene which follows indeed astonished us. We were not prepared for this conduct on the part of a woman whom amnesia had driven to forgetting her own name. We simulated wishing to borrow money from her. With an insinuating tone, "I need some money," without disturbing herself, remaining seated. "Very well, everybody needs that. But you understand that if I were to come and hunt for 20 sous, somebody would have to give it to me. One must eat. This is the nonsense of aphasia. Let us continue. But I need money. Me too, faith. I am going to write a note for you to give me money. No, monsieur, I have no money for that. Taking a pen. I am going to write a note for you to give me money. I have none. I cannot give you any. One always has money. I should like to know, I who am all alone. Writing. I write, Madame Langlaise will give me 10 francs. Raising her voice. No, no, no. I cannot give money to anybody. I have none. Well, my husband left me well fixed. No, I won't give any of it. With that the merchants are very kind. Showing the note. Very well, I have made the note for 10 francs. You will sign it. No, no, monsieur, I have none, no money. Come on, sign this. No, no, I cannot. I have no money. I am all alone, indignant. And then I must. If I earn 20 sous, and I eat at the same time, I would have nothing, so I cannot. See here, Madame Langlaise, you must sign. No, I cannot. I cannot give money when I have none. She is angry, she wheels in her chair and turns her back to us. And my son, he would fix me. He would say you are indeed crazy. I have not worked all winter. Give me 10 francs because I want to buy a bicycle. Well, yes, I do not say no, but I have no money. You understand a woman who works? If I had, I might say I have some. I need it for a wedding. To go to a wedding? You have more than I. You earn more than I. I cannot. Have you much of a fortune? Indignant. I have the money that I earn. About how much have you? I don't need to tell you what I have. You have more than I. You understand? A woman of my age cannot have much. But you have a house? And if I had a house, it wouldn't be for you. You must have money in an old drawer. And if I had, I wouldn't give it to you, my dear friend, if you have only that. Insinuatingly, shall I write to your son for him to give me your money? Furious. Well, there is our children. If there is a 20-franc piece, and he will give it. Money, I have none, nor my son either. I assure you I need money because I love delicate food. Well, we eat potatoes with oil and vinegar. I eat that, and it is good. Since I came here, I have had nothing at all. Without saying a word, we hand her the pen. No, I have no money at all. In her indignation, she rises and walks about the room while we both remain seated at the table. Her countenance is animated. She pronounces her words indistinctly. She encounters the basket of apples. She takes one and tries to break it. while saying words like this. No, I have no money for anyone. We offer to help her cut her apple. She refuses. A woman all alone. She scolds. What money can she have? A woman all alone. She seats herself apart and eats her apple with a surly air, all the time repeating the same words. Time passes. Already 10 minutes have elapsed since she took the apple, but her anger does not leave her. That demand for money is always on her heart. She talks to herself about it constantly. Finally, the one of us who had conducted the dialogue, Binet, leaves the room, and she draws close to Dr. Simon and says to him under her breath, "Who is that man there?" "I cannot. I have only just enough for myself." "No, I will not. My husband would scold me. I don't want to be tormented like that. If Louis came, he would lead me such a life." Why? Her grudge is so strong that when B returns to the room, the dement refuses to speak to him. We insist upon photographing her. She refuses obstinately. She continues to dig in the basket for apples and to crunch them. We wish to call her attention to the fact that the apples do not belong to her. "Where did you buy that apple?" "It was given to me." "Who gave you that apple?" "It is not your affair." "See here, where did you get that apple?" "There are more in the field." "But you did not go into the field to get it?" "That is nothing to you. It came from the field." "Did you steal it?" "That's none of your affair." "Why, no. Why do you come asking me that?" "Ask you a little. There, who is going to ask me?" She takes another apple. "Apples cost 4 sous. That's none of your affairs." "It is worth 4 sous. It isn't yours." Impossible to talk any more with her. She has become intractable. We are obliged to let her go. An attendant comes and gets her and takes her to the hall. This curious scene lasts for nearly 3/4 of an hour. There was not a moment of forgetfulness. The patient never for an instant forgot that her money was wanted. Her anger increased steadily in a sort of classical manner, first restrained by a feeling of propriety, then overflowing, allowing such remarks as, "That's none of your affairs," and ending in a calmer state of persistent rancour against the one who attempted to take her money. It is really interesting to see such a continuity of thought in a patient suffering from profound amnesia. 2. Comparison between senile dementia and paralytic dementia. It remains for us to draw from these two observations of senile dementia a conclusion relative to the theory of dementia in general. Senile dementia has been judged from very different points of view. In the first place, one has been so deceived by the incoherence of their words that it's been supposed that they had incoherence of ideas, or delirium. Let us recall in this connection the contradictory replies which the old woman gave of the age of their mothers and the number of their children. A more exact interpretation has shown that in this case the incoherence is more apparent than real. It indicates disturbance of language, the unconsciousness use of inexact words, and this paraphrasing is only one of the many manifestations of more considerable disturbance of memory. Senile demons present in reality their characteristic trait of having become incompatible of remembering. They have lost the faculty of evocation and of fixation, so far as it can be lost. For proof of this we need nothing more than the game with the cards described above, which, indeed, gives positive results only with patients of this category. If senile demons are especially affected by the evocation of their memories, it is right to say that we should compare them to general paralytics, since we have admitted that, with the latter, the impotence of evocation gives the key to all or nearly all of their disturbances of functioning. No, this comparison would not be correct, because when one talks of senile demons, one notes this extremely important fact that they have good sense and are conscious of their sorry state of decay, which contrasts clearly with the unconsciousness which marks most general paralytics. Moreover, for a long time it has been acknowledged that the difference between the two forms of dementia lies in the fact that in senile dementia the judgment is better preserved than in paralytic dementia. We admit this point of view without hesitation, but we believe it important to emphasize the psychological consequences which proceed from this, because these consequences so far have not been pointed out. If it is true, as we believe, that senile demons are not lacking in good sense or in good judgment, this makes the mental nature of judgment appear in a new light. Our classical theories, which constantly put the assent on the clearest and most conscious part of the mental processes, the idea which admit that the intelligence is a combination of ideas and that the law of the intelligence is a logical law. These theories, we say, consider the judgment also as an ideational manifestation, as an act which consists in grasping the relation of two ideas, in uniting them or in opposing them. If it were really so, the facts of pathological observation which we have just reported could not be understood. One who was incapable of having ideas would be incapable of judging, and our two poor old women, who are able to recall almost nothing in the form of words or images, could neither judge nor appreciate. How would Madame Moquelard ever have come to judge the laughter of the imbecile Denise as childish and unmannerly if it had been necessary for her to represent to herself under the form of ideas the attitude of good manners? We much more rarely believe that the act of judging consists essentially in an emotive and motor tendency to approve and to disapprove. This tendency may indeed manifest itself by ideas which are the motives of judgment, but often the ideas do not form themselves clearly after the judgment is pronounced, and often they are so slow in forming themselves that they never appear. One judges without motive, without justification, without ideas, but nevertheless one judges. At the moment of judging, one is animated by a certain feeling which draws one towards or turns one from the object judged. It is this feeling which is the foundation of the matter. The painter to whom one submits a canvas says, "That is no good," but he cannot always express clearly what is no good. He has the feeling, and this feeling is often as strong, as imperious, as irresistible as the most clearly deduced reasoning. In the same way, one may have the feeling that an action is impossible, or that a certain course is unreasonable, or that a certain expression is immoral, and one disapproves because he is animated by a certain feeling of disapprobation, without having a single clear idea, without attempting to give any justification, without referring to a norm of things possible, reasonable, or moral. We might even go farther. One could insist that there are certain acts of judgment which are performed only by ideas, which are the simulations of judgment rather than real judgments. One submits an action to a person for his judgment. If that person possesses the instinctive part of judgment, he will exclaim, "But that is crazy, that is idiotic," etc. Exactly as another to whom we present a foreign food, after having put it in his mouth, exclaims, "That nauseates me." On the contrary, one who has not this instinctive reaction is obliged to compare the act submitted to him with the memory of other similar acts, and to recall to himself, even in analogous circumstances, the action has been generally disapproved, has appeared ridiculous or imprudent. Thus he makes a comparison, an appreciation by means of a norm, which is furnished to him by his experience. This diverted process is, we believe, the rock of salvation for those who have no judgment, and who endeavour, nevertheless, not to be deceived. This certainly is not to say that the judgment by ideas is always false or bad, but in itself it is rather empty and very subject to errors in the same way that judgment by instinct is very narrow. The true judgment is a synthesis which includes at the same time both feeling and idea. Let us conclude by a little psychological experiment which throws a clear light upon the important role of feeling in judgment. Suppose that someone writes before us a list of 100 common words like duck, hat, meadow, etc. We have read them over so as to practically know them. Now the list is hidden. We are given a word at random, and we must reply as to whether or not it is in the list. The necessary time for judging varies a little, according to the case, according to the word, according to the persons who serve as subjects, and a host of other circumstances impossible to evaluate. But on the average the time is very short. 2 or 3 seconds suffice to decide whether the word is new or known. Now 2 or 3 seconds is not sufficient to recapitulate, even mentally, a list of 100 words, and moreover the testimony of the subjects is that they never make the mental recapitulation. They do not make it because they do not feel the need of it. One passes judgment upon the word whether it is new or known according to a particular feeling which is awakened by the audition. A feeling of novelty, of surprise if it is unknown, a feeling of having been already seen, of familiarity in the contrary case. Hence, then, is a case of an act of judgment, very clear, very easy to analyze, which would require, if one conformed to the rules of logic, a detailed comparison with images or perceptions, but which in reality disregards all this, is nothing less than intellectual and is produced by the wholly instinctive operation of feeling. This is the point to which reflection upon the results of our experimental psychology leads us. These results are confirmed by the results of pathological psychology. We've just seen two old women who have a remarkable poverty of ideas and who often show a positive inability for evoking the proper idea. In spite of this, they judge, and they judge exceedingly well. By their attitudes, they show that they have preserved their feeling of propriety. By the way in which they refuse to reply haphazard to what they do not know, they prove that they have the feeling of true and false. Certain ones have also, in the most touching manner, the painful feeling of their own decay and are sorrowful over the effects of old age. Often they have also the consciousness of being in a hospital. We have seen in Madame Collard the feeling of disappropriation for the puerile laughter of an imbecile. Even at our own expense, we have learned how much Madame Langlaise judges the danger of putting her signature to a note, because she never pardoned the proposition which we made to her of borrowing 10 francs. All these judgments are the indications of a character which, in spite of amnesia, is not yet disorganized. Thus, in the presence of a senile dement, one has a clear impression that there is before him a personality that holds itself together, and not one that is amorphous. In terminating this point, let us harmonize these conclusions with those acquired from another study which we made upon the relation of speech and thought. We have seen that there are thoughts without images even among normal adults who are in full possession of themselves, because it was among them that we made this unexpected observation. They are able to have an image and to think far beyond this image, to think things very much more complicated which the images cannot represent. We have further seen that there are some thoughts without words. We have found the proof of this among imbeciles in cases of aphasia. What remains of a thought from which its two principal elements, consciousness and analysis, have been removed? We have shown that there remains a particular tendency which manifests itself under the form of an indefinable feeling. One has the feeling of an intention. We now extend this theory to judgment, and it certainly does not require a great effort of the imagination to make such an extension, because to think is to judge, and what is true of thought in general must be equally true of judgment. In every thought there is an appreciation, and this appreciation is a judgment. We have besides direct proof that this theory is true of judgment, because we have seen that patients afflicted with amnesia, incapable of recalling the vast majority of their memories, can nevertheless continue to judge correctly. They have had the experience and they retain good sense and a critical mind, even though they can no longer revert the precise memories of their experiences nor cite the least fact. In the place of precise memories, they have the feelings of things, and that suffices. It amounts to the same thing. It permits them to make a judgment. According to our hypothesis, the feeling presents itself in a definite relation to the idea. Idea and feeling make one. They are two successive stages of the same process. That which is idea was at first a feeling, and the feeling is evolving and rendering itself precise, becomes at the same time idea, word, action. The feeling is the obscure, heated stage. When it clears, it becomes more comprehensible and rational. It produces ideas. In senile dementia, it is the last part, the flower of the process, as it were, the idea that it struck and withers, but the instinctive part remains vivid. And it's thus that senile dements are reduced to an instinctive existence, consequently very low, very animal, but still coordinate. Let us recall in this relation a scheme of thought which consists in a triple phenomenon of direction, adaptation, and control. It now appears to us that it is not only the control which can occur under the form of feeling, but also the direction, since senile dements, in spite of their amnesia, know how to keep a given direction and a prolonged attitude. Moreover, we can no longer be content with the conclusion that in senile dementia there is a conservation of the judgment. We go farther, even to the much more interesting and more profound conclusion that senile dementia tends towards a destruction of the ideational life with conservation of the instinctive part of the thought. Certainly this word instinct is one which has been most seriously and most dangerously abused, and perhaps one would not find two psychologists or two naturalists who would give the same definition of instinct. It is therefore perhaps dangerous to introduce this word of equivocal meaning into a new analysis of the phenomena of intelligence. Nevertheless, in spite of all these objections, in terminating the study of senile dementia, we have decided to present a proposition relative to the distinction to be established between ideational intelligence, which, as its name indicates, operates by means of ideas and words, and instinctive intelligence. The latter evidently has nothing whatever to do with certain characteristics which rightly or wrongly are attributed to the instincts of animals. When one wishes, chiefly for theoretical reasons, to make a distinction between instinct and reason, we do not in the least attribute to that which we call instinctive intelligence the qualities of innateness, infallibility, specificness, imperfectibility, necessity. A single character, a character wholly negative, without doubt the most important character of instinct, is found in the instinctive manifestation of the intelligence. That is, it is the lack of an exact image picturing the end to be attained and the means to be employed, which would give to all this a clear awareness. There is here the lack of a logical perception, of a verbal reasoning, which would permit of explaining and of demonstrating a succession of truths. It is, in a word, in the realm of the unknown and the mysterious, surrounding actions which are none the less adapted and intelligent in their effects. Let us go back and compare our two senile dements with our general paralytics. It has long been said that judgment remains in senile dementia, but is lost in paralytic dementia. This truth is open to criticism when affirmed in such absolute terms, because it is possible to find some traces of judgment among general paralytics who are at the beginning of their malady. There are others, quite advanced in certain symptoms, who still retain a certain amount of good sense. We have drawn at some length the portrait of Madame Soulas, a paralytic who passed judgment upon herself and found herself very stupid. One could not have said of her that paralytic dementia always destroys the judgment. To avoid these contradictions, one must take into account the fundamental idea of level. Without doubt, at a given level, the general paralytic has infinitely less judgment than the senile dement. Madame Langlois has an intelligence of scarcely 4 years. The paralytics of 7 or 8 years judge much less correctly than she, and have consequently very much less common sense. Here is an incident in proof of this. Some pages back we spoke of the anger of Madame Langlois, whom we requested to sign a note for 10 francs. It is well known that paralytics, on the contrary, are very generous and would give away millions when delirious. But even apart from all delirium, one very easily obtains from many of them gifts by writing. When Madame Langlois left us, we had the curiosity to call into the office a general paralytic whom we knew very well, a woman named Bernard, and to demand money of her in a similar manner. The reception was altogether different. This woman has a level of 7 years. Writing. Madame Bernard, have you a little money? None. But one always has a little money. I had some money once. You see, I need some money. I also need some, and I shall have some money. How much have you? A good deal of money. 1 million? Oh, no, more than that. Not 1 million, no. Not very clear. Her reply seems contradictory. I need some money. I wish you would sign a note for me. By no means offended. Yes, a note. Writing. Your name is Madame Bernard. Yes, that was my maiden name. And your married name? Madame Dubois. No, you were going to sign this. Madame Bernard will give 100 francs to M. Francois. Yes, she laughs and signs. She will give me 100 francs. Without the least concern, I have 1,800 francs. I can get 20 francs 1 glass. Thus it is extremely easy to obtain the signature of Madame Bernard. To make her laugh a little and terminate the scene, we risk a pleasantry, but she does not understand it. In order that your debt may be altogether serious, I am going to make you swear upon the tail of a cow. Seriously? There are cows at Parthenay, her native city. This is only the value of an anecdote. We cite it merely to establish a striking contrast from the point of view of feeling between the woman Langlois, the senile dement, who has a level of 4 years, and the woman Bernard, paralytic dement, who has a level of 7 years. While the former so easily evokes feelings which prevent her from loaning the money, the latter evokes nothing, lets things go, remains indifferent. This state of indifference, by the way, is very remarkable with general paralytics, and we suppose that their indifference must be attributed to troubles of functioning. They still possess the necessary feeling, but they cannot evoke it. The difficulties of evocation bear, therefore, at the same time upon their feelings and upon their ideas. But in order for this thesis to be quite clear, it must be limited and defined by several remarks. It is not saying that general paralytics have wholly lost the faculty of being emotionally aroused. Such an affirmation would be opposed to everyday observation. They are patients that under many circumstances show themselves very emotional. It is easy to anger them, easy to make them weep. We recall a woman with a level of 9 years to whom we said, by way of experiment, that they never gave the patients anything to eat at the hospital which she had just entered. Immediately she burst into tears like a child. It proved to be also the grief of a child, which did not last long, and which was easily consoled. Inside of 3 minutes we took the 2 photographs with contrary expressions. The emotions of these patients seem to us to lack continuity. They can be intense, but they do not last long. Moreover, they are incongruous, and often followed by states which are quite incompatible with them. We have seen an example of this in Ramonot, who said to us in all the same minute when we were conjecturing a certain event, said for her, "I would weep, then I would laugh." In a word, it is only the simplest, the most rudimentary feelings which manifest themselves among general paralytics. There is a complete hierarchy in the emotional life. The so-called intellectual sentiments, those which form the substance of judgment, occupy the most elevated part of the scale. Feelings of propriety, truth, probability, justice, are among those which are lost in the general paralytic. Thus the paralytic appears to us like a being whose personality is profoundly disturbed. If one compares the paralytic with a senile dement, both having the level of 4 years, one has the impression that in the case of the senile dement, he is in the presence of somebody, while with the paralytic there is no longer anybody. Figure 24 is displayed on the previous page. Madame Prior, general paralytic, intellectual level of 9 years. We have just announced to her that at the hospital they never eat. The patient at this news begins to cry. Figure 25 is displayed on the page. 2 minutes later we assured Madame Prior that it is a joke. She at once resumes her smile of satisfaction. End of section 28. Section 29 of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon, translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. This LibriVox recording is a public domain, recorded by Leon Harvey. Conclusion. As much to close this study as to begin others, we terminate by summing up whatever our experiments and reflections have taught us as essential in the psychology of senile and paralytic dementia. It will mark a stage in the journey for later works. These 2 forms of dementia correspond to a lowering of intelligence which is measurable, as we have seen. From this comes a practical conclusion that dements are unable to adapt themselves any longer to the ordinary condition of life. They have no need of the simpler life of the hospital. There is here, of course, a commonplace phenomenon which is to be found in a great number of forms of insanity, and it can characterize none, because it is almost an absolute rule that the insane undergo a lowering of level. Second, traits more important than the preceding, senile and paralytic dementia, belong to the category of deficient mental states. Let us understand by that these mental states separate themselves from the normal not only by addition of certain positive symptoms, which would constitute originality, but rather by the absence, the gap, the weakness of certain integral parts of the normal mechanism. From this point of view, the insanities resemble the original states of idiocy, imbecility, and moronity, which constitute also the states frankly defective. Only that which is a loss among dements is a lack of acquisition among defectives. The difference between the one and the other is that the one is inertia of functioning, and the other insufficiency of development. This was already known, or at least suspected. Our work has especially consisted in putting precision into the statement and in filling out formulas that were rather empty. We know now that the inertia of functioning consists in a weakness of the evocation of the states of consciousness, and that the lack of development is manifested in the quality of the states of consciousness which are not sufficiently differentiated. These few words sum up a considerable experience to which one must return in order to appreciate its value, and which can serve the clinician for the diagnosis of embarrassing cases. Here then is what we have learned about the intimate nature of dementia. We know how to distinguish it from original defectiveness. We do not distinguish it by means of incidence, but by its characteristic form. It remains now to complete the comparison of dementia with other insane states. This comparison, if we sometimes have the time and the means to pursue it, will permit us better to understand dementia, because by multiplying the points of comparison, we make the study more profound. It will permit us especially to prolong our analysis of alienation. Since the study of imbeciles has enabled us to know demons, it is to be hoped that the study of demons, in their turn, will enable us to comprehend confusional states and delirium. In a well-ordered sequence of works, the results acquired facilitate the subsequent conquests, just as a stone placed in an edifice serves as a base for new stones. Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon. Footnote. It will be noted that when we seem in all our study to have considered the weakness of evocation as a most important fact, it is a most important fact for the present article in which we are obliged to limit ourselves. But we are far from thinking that this should be a most important fact for psychological explanations, and especially for physiological explanation. Only there should be an agreement as to the value and the import of certain physiological explanations. Since Matthias Duval, some neurologists, some alienists, have believed that they could explain a host of psychic phenomena, anesthesia, amnesia, delirium, by supposing that these phenomena were due to the fact that some cerebral neurons had been severed from their communications. These are surely suppositions too convenient. They explain everything and consequently explain nothing. We refuse to explain in this manner the failure of evocation met with in dements. For the same reason we shall not state the very vague ideas that have been expressed on psychological phenomena considered as forces, but we have ingeniously described as a nerve force, a tension, a flow, a latent energy, comparing them to the physical force engendered by a reservoir full of water. It would be easy to apply these notions to the mental state of demons, and to say that their psychic processes are lacking in nerve force or intention. But what is the use? Without conjecturing what the future may teach us about cerebral dynamics, we can say that for the present, these are only metaphors. End of section 29, and the end of The Intelligence of the Feeble-Minded by Alfred Binet and Théodore Simon, translated by Elizabeth S. Kite. Recorded by Leon Harvey for LibriVox.org.